Hello, everybody. Thank you for joining our session. This is a Development in Asia Roundtable. At first, let me introduce myself. I'm Kenji Sekine from Tokyo. I'm a chair of the Advice and Assistant Committee, Asian Task Force. And here is Tanuja. She is a vice chair of the Asian Task Force. Let me explain today's agenda first. Next page.
Okay, hold on.
Yep.
I'm hiding. There. Fixed.
Okay, yes. Here is the agenda. We have the two sessions in this afternoon. The first session is for 2 hours. This is related to the establishing and nurturing relationships with the regulators. And we will have the 30 minutes break. And then we will have another session about the professionalism, education, and delivery. Go to the next page. And let's get started the first sessions. And this is a session of the establishing and nurturing relationship with the regulators. The objective of the session is this panel discussion aims to share experiences regarding the relationship of actuarial associations that are working to gain or have just gained the recognition of local authorities. It will also hear from more developed associations. Let me explain a little bit more about the objectives. As you know, the insurance industry is highly regulated by the government and regulators. So as a professional of the insurance industry, it's very important for actuaries to understand the full picture of the regulatory environment, what kind of things we have to pay attention to, what is the expectations of the regulators, and how we can develop good and better relationship with them now and in the future. So in today's panel discussion, we have invited 3 types of actuarial associations. The first category is the associations that are working to gain the recognition of local authorities. And the second category is that is Nepal and Vietnam. And second category is associations that have just gained the recognition of local authority, that is Sri Lanka. And the third category is more advanced associations that have already developed a good relationship with the local authority, that is Singapore and Japan. Finally, in terms of the way how to proceed with these sessions, each presenter will give around 10 minutes presentation, followed by a Q&A on the presentation. Then, after finishing the presentations and the Q&As by 5 presenters, we will do some discussions. Okay, let's go to the next page. Okay. Let me explain today's the panelists. The first one from Singapore, Alex Hoi Min Lim, President of Singapore Actuarial Society, former regulator and CFO, Chief Actuary of Singapore's first digital insurer. And from Japan, Yuzo Tomimura, General Secretary of the Institute of Actuaries of Japan. Mr. Tomimura has been working for Meiji Yasuda Life for over 30 years. His background is the development of life insurance product, pricing, risk management, life insurance reserving, etc. And also the next one, we have the Kasun Amarasriya, experienced actuary working across a number of roles in the life insurance industry, both in Australia and Sri Lanka, Vice President of the Actuarial Association of Sri Lanka. And the next, from Nepal, Prechana Masimba, founding president of the Actuarial Society of Nepal and current president of the Actuarial Society of Nepal. And the last one is Longshan Trong. Mr. Trong is the appointed actuary of Baobet Life. He is also serving as the head of the Actuarial Committee under the Insurance Association of Vietnam. He is actively seeking to establish and Actuarial Society for Vietnam. Okay. Today we will have these 5 presenters. Okay, so let's go to the next. Okay, Alex, please give the presentation about
Thank
Singapore.
you.
Yep.
Thank you for inviting me. Yes. Next, let me start with explaining the regulatory landscape in Singapore. Do I have a clicker?
No, but it was to use. You can use it.
Okay, sure, no problem. Thank you. Yes. Okay. So I show here 5 different regulators. First is Monetary Authority of Singapore, which is the regulator that possess direct powers over actuaries. And we also have other regulators like the Central Provident Board, Ministry of Health, Ministry of Manpower, Ministry of Transport. They regulate some of the insurance products, so they have influence over the employers of the actuaries. And currently, 3 of the regulators do hire actuaries in their shop, right? MAS, CPF Board, and MOH. I started my career as a regulator with Monetary Authority of Singapore for 6.5 years. Okay. So when we talk about building relationship with regulators, I think Singapore Actuarial Society was very fortunate, and we started very lucky, and I will take this opportunity to honor a few people who let us have that strong relationship with regulators. Let's start with Mr. Lawson King. He's our founding member of Singapore Actuarial Society. He was also our president for 1980 to 83, 1996 to 97. He was former insurance commissioner in MAS and introduced the appointed actuary concept to Singapore. He was also former president of Life Insurance Association, General Insurance Association, and also former chairman of Singapore Insurance Institute. So we started very well because a founding member is the regulator. Okay. Then followed by that, we have Ms. Mi Ho. Right. She worked under Mr. Law in MAS, and she was the lead drafter of the regulations that govern appointed actuaries. Right. She was also a council member in 1996 to 98. After that, we have Mrs. Hao Soo-hoon and Mr. Tarak Lei. Mrs. Hao was the Executive Director of Insurance, so they changed the name of Insurance Commissioner to Executive Director of Insurance. She was leading that role in year 2000 to 2005, and Hartley worked for Soo-hoon as a life insurance head. Director of Insurance over the same period. And that's when they also introduced the certifying actuary concept for the non-life side, the insurance side, and also the original appointed actuaries regulations named the SOA, IFOA, and the key associations in the regulations, but Mrs. Ha and Mr. Tan sort of changed that list to say that direct life insurance company must have fellow of SAS to be the signing actuary. So we had a very strong footing in the first 30 years where we have senior actuaries working for the regulators, helping to drive the recognition of our profession and of SAS. Okay. So now, according to the regulations, the roles of actuaries would include pricing, evaluation, financial condition reporting, investment management advice, with profits bonus recommendation, expense allocation, and also signing off of the contribution to policy owner protection fund. And all these roles would vary whether you're working for life or non-life companies, or whether it's a direct or reinsurance. I think that the most comprehensive scope is for the direct life companies. Okay. How we divide up the work. So MAS basically focuses on setting the broad regulatory framework, set the fit and proper requirements for who would be appointed as who should be appointed as appointed actuary, right, and certifying actuaries, and also set rules where standardization is required to maintain level playing field. So, for example, prescribing the risk-free rate used in valuation, the stress factor used to calculate capital requirement in the standard formula setting. Whereas SAS would be in charge of setting code of conduct for our actuaries, the broad actuarial standards, which is modeled after ISAC 1, and also the CPD requirements. We maintain a disciplinary scheme, and we also set practice-specific standards, especially for areas that require actuarial judgment. For example, how we set assumptions for biometric risk and policyholder behavior. And then MAS will conduct inspection and review for compliance with both the rules that they set and also the standards that we set. Okay. So we do have good collaboration with our regulators. So for example, in the development of the risk-based capital requirement, both the version 1 and the recently launched version 2, Singapore Actuarial Societies and its members were also invited into the task force. We'll have both meetings and we'll also give written feedback to MAS about their drafts. More recently, we have also published a discussion paper on the portability of integrated shield plans. While this paper is more initiative of SAS, but the early drafts, we also let the Ministry of Health and MAS to take a look before we formally publish it so that it won't come as a surprise for them. Other than that, we also have some ongoing communication channels. So for example, MAS will always be invited to present our annual Singapore Actuarial Conference and also the practice certificate seminar twice a year so that they can give us the latest regulatory developments and expectations. We also have regular dialogue between the practice committees and regulator, so between Life Committee and MAS, the Health Committee and Ministry of Health, and also the Retirement Committee and the Central Provident Fund Board. So, if I were to ask to give advice on how we gain more recognition from regulators, of course, bullet point number 1 is have actuaries work for them at senior level or to advocate for the profession. But I do recognize that in many Asian countries where the pay scale is a bit rigid, even at senior level within the ministry, right, they may not be able to afford an actuary, right, then maybe at least make sure that that your members would be working for the key outsourced consulting firm or whatever that's advising the regulators. Also, it's ideal to show that insurers that use actuaries have better performance, more stable profits and solvency position, and better manage risk. Of course, the regulators would also want to be able to tell their peers at IIS that they are progressive and whatnot. So if you can help them draft regulations, and especially if you can highlight that the drafts meet the international standards, that would be very helpful. Also arrange access to international experts for your regulator. I think all this will help. Yeah? Okay, so in this last part of my presentation, I would like to sort of give a word of caution as you develop your regulator engagement strategy. We are seeing more and more actuaries who find rewarding and profitable career outside of the regulated activities. So you can see on this slide, we have Mr. Frank Chen, who is president of CAS, formerly actually working for Google and now VP of Uber. Right, you have Mr. Frankie Chan, who now heads the program value optimization for airlines and insurance partnership for Cathay Pacific, which also oversees your miles program. Right, and my classmate, Mr. Raymond Zhang, he is an InsurTech and Health Tech founder, ESG consultant from Nigeria, and also he teaches in university. So you can see you don't always have to work for a regulated role in order to be successful. Right, so don't let people sort of pigeonhole you into what emerging market or whatever nicer sounding name to say that, okay, the only way to develop your association is focus on the regulated role and then branch out to newer fields. Doesn't have to always be that way. The parallel analogy that I would give is digital payments. Right, so the conventional wisdom is that, first you must move people who are unbanked into the banking system so that they have bank account, then they will proceed to use digital payment very well. But you can see from this chart that APAC is actually leading the growth in digital payment landscape. Because, for example, if you look at Vietnam, right, you can just walk up to a 7-Eleven, right, and give money to the cashier over the counter to top up your digital wallet, and you are in the digital payment landscape. You need not be banked. So with this kind of innovation and working around, I would actually say that the current APAC digital payment landscape is better than North America significantly, where the bank is capturing the whole conversation. So similarly, as you develop your actuarial association, think rightly. Because after all, actuaries, one of the key roles is to manage risk. Right? You also don't want to have an excessive concentration risk such that you only, the validity of your association solely relies on the validation from one regulator. That is dangerous. Right? If they suddenly want you to do something that is against public interest, then you may be captured. Right? So just be mindful of that. Right? And so SAS is coming to its 50th anniversary in a couple of years. What I've been trying to do is to sort of recalibrate how we engage the regulators. I think the basis of communication or relationship I'm trying to insist on is that it should be based on mutual respect and we see each other as equal. And there's a basis of conversation when both parties have the intent to serve the people of our country well, right? I know in Asian culture, it's often that the regulator will see themselves as the ruler or whatever. So there's this top and bottom relationship. But I think it's important to be mindful in our interaction with the regulator, not be pigeonholed into that top and bottom structure. And in order to do that, I think first we have to strengthen our core, making sure that our knowledge is robust to be able to tackle a wide range of issues that the society face. And once you are armed with that knowledge, then it will give you confidence to interact with your regulator, such that if they were to propose something that may not be in line of the public interest, you would have the confidence to speak up, and of course try to be doing it politely, then tell them that this may not be the best for the society. Just basically keep the backbone and just maintain that mutual respect and seeing each other as equal, that kind of relationship. So once you maybe push back to them a couple of times, they recognize that you are different from other counterparties that they interact with and always counter to them. Yeah, so yeah, respect is a two-way street. So that's how I will end my presentation today.
Thank you very much, Alex. Wonderful presentation. So here, we are welcome any comment or the questions on Alex's presentation. Alex, but at first, I understand that there is a good relation between the regulator and the associations, and I understand that some of the regulatory the body, for example, MAS, had the actuaries. So can you elaborate a little bit? How many actually do you have in Singapore, and what is the impact in the the government, and how many are in the private sectors?
Okay, I think we have maybe 3,000-4,000 actually trained people in Singapore, but I think SAS only has about 1,000 members. The thing is that not all actuaries that work for the government are our members. Right? I think even when I was with MAS, I only decided to join SAS when I was about to qualify. In my first 6 years, I actually didn't join. Yeah, I get my FIAA first, and then I joined FSAS. Right. Yeah. So at the moment, I think in MAS there are 5 actually trained people. Maybe I think 1 or 2 of them are fellows. Actually, I didn't keep track of how many of them are actually our members. Maybe most of them are not. Yeah. And then in the Central Provident Fund Board, it's only quite recently that they re-established the actuarial team. And I understand that they now have around 10 people in the team, and will start to do a lot more monitoring the experience and also the pricing of the national health insurance schemes and also death and TPD protection schemes. And then in the Ministry of Health, I think it is one at the moment. Yeah, there used to be a few more actuaries in the MOH a couple of years back, but I think many of them left after that. Yeah, so and also, I think also different regulator uses the actuarial staff differently. Some would listen to their advice more. Others are basically using the actuaries as a should I use the word shield or whatever, at least someone who has the designation to help them rubber stamp their position. So yeah, there's a range of treatment, yeah.
Okay, thank you. Are there any other questions? Okay.
What is the general regulation environment in Singapore? Because I just wonder in Asian country, many regulators are quite very rural-based. They are more detailed right, to set a lot of regulation, either on product valuation or capital. So I don't know what is the general idea about that.
We used to be quite rule-based. I think since our last Prime Minister, Mr. Lee Hsien Loong, became Prime Minister, we sort of start to move away from rule-based to principle-based regulations. So now you only occasionally, like in, let's say, RBC, where there are specific factors for you to follow, or because we're still on standard formula, so maybe that part is more rule-based. But for other things like risk management, maybe stress tests or ERM or cyber risk, all those are generally more, I would say, more principle-based. Yeah.
Yeah, that's very different for different countries.
So I think most of the time for products, you just need to file for information. You don't have to have every product pricing and features agreed by the regulator. For most products, correct?
Yeah. Because even for a regulator in Taiwan, even if there are some new product that's come out and maybe the regulator may think it's kind of risky or something, they will start to watch it carefully and to do a lot of discussion just to be more based. Yeah, that's good.
Yeah, so I think it also boils down to how do we instill more confidence in the regulators that maybe actuaries can be a good gatekeeper for some of these, right? Then they can sort of delegate some of the power and be less rule-based, right? Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Are there the poll? Do you have? Okay.
Yeah, thanks. Alex, I would like to ask questions. I mean, is there the MAS always supportive of the actuarial, of the actuaries, SAS? Because I know that even in the company, there is also always up and downs. Like if the CEO not an actuary, there are CEOs who love actuaries, there are CEOs who hate actuaries. Right? I mean, is there always MAS support the SAS and the actuarial society, or there are era where the MAS they don't like the actuaries, and how you cope with that?
Well, I would say that generally I think they are very supportive. Otherwise, they wouldn't be accepting our invitation 3 times a year to come and speak. And they do share very openly about their regulatory expectations. Well, there may be company-specific issues, but I don't think it's anything that's targeted at the actuarial profession. It's more like an individual personality issue. Yeah. So generally, I would still say that the relationship has been quite positive. Yeah.
Okay, thank you very much. So because of the time constraint, I will move to the next presenter. But thank you very much, Alex. Wonderful presentation. Yeah. Okay, next presenter is Yuzo Tomimura-san from Japan.
Hello everyone. I'm honored to be here to give you all the presentation. I'm Yuzo member from the Institute of Actuaries of Japan, or the IAJ. I'm going to talk about the role of actuaries and the IAJ under the law and regulation in Japan. Okay. First of all, let me introduce the IAJ briefly. The IAJ was founded in 1899. This year is the 125th anniversary. The idea was prescribed by insurance business law in 2000 as a designated association. Our main activities are study and research, and education and examination. Next slide, please. The number of individual members is 5,601, and has increased thanks to the strong demand for human resources. Next is this is a breakdown. Next is a breakdown of the number of membership by industry. The bottom is not see, but actually it belongs to a variety of industries. Nearly half of members are working for life insurance companies. The bottom number is 2,277. 73.
The bottom of the total is 5,600.
Yes, and the number of actuaries working for life insurance is 2,273. Next is about qualification examination. The idea has original qualification examination, which has two stages. The candidate can become an actuary by passing exams and taking some pieces of training, like the bottom. Next is overview of service under law. The law and the act relating to actual service are insurance business law and defined benefit pension plan act. When it comes to insurance business law, first, the IJ is entrusted as a designated association with the tasks of the development of standard mortality table and the development and the revision of standards of practice. Second, the insurance company is required to have an appointed actuary under the law, and the appointed actuary must be a fellow of the IAJ. The third, under economic value-based solvency regulations introduced in 2025, a responsible person for reviewing insurance liabilities will have to be a fellow of the IAJ. Lastly, regarding defined benefit pension plan act, certificated pension actuaries, or CPA, has a role in verifying the actual report. Being a fellow of the IJ is one of the requirements for becoming a CPA. Next slide is the role of actuaries in insurance companies. Many of actuaries are working to prepare the statutory financial statement. The others are in charge of risk management and development of new products, especially pricing. Documents on financial statement, solvency margin ratio, and also report, etc., are submitted to the FSA, and the insurance company is monitored by the FSA. The insurance company applies for approval of new product to the FSA. The idea is interested with the development and revision of standard mortality table, which is one of the bases used to the calculation of statutory reserves for life insurance companies in Japan. The standard mortality advisory committee among the IAJ verifies if the applied standard mortality table can be appropriate to be used. The IAJ has a role in developing and revising the standards of practice as a designated association. If necessary, the IAJ applies for certification of new or revised standards of practice, and then the FSA approves them. Appointing actuary proceeds with dues under the laws and submits opinion report to the board of directors and its copy to the FSA. Here are the conditions of appointment of appointed actuaries under the Insurance Business Law and the Act. Appropriate actuarial qualification and experience is required like this. Here, duties and the involvement of appointed actuary under the Insurance Business Law and the Act. Appointed actuaries shall prepare written opinion reports that stated the result of confirmation on policy reserve, policyholder dividends, and the status of assets. Let me show you other relations to the FSA. The FSA set the guidelines for supervision for insurance companies to supervise insurance companies. There is a statement about the IAJ in it, and the FSA supervises the IAJ as a designated association. The IAJ has some opportunity to discuss on actual hot issues of life insurance products. Lastly, the IAJ often cooperates with the FSA for the implementation of new regulations and the amendment of the regulations. For example, currently, the IAJ is under consideration on the guidelines about the calculation of insurance liabilities based on economic value and the framework for a responsible person for reviewing insurance liabilities. When the IAJ revises standards of practice for appointed actuaries, the IAJ always consults with the FSA. Next is a certified pension actuary. The purpose of the certified pension actuaries or CPA is system to confirm that each corporate pension plan is operated pursuant to appropriate pension actual principles in order to secure participants' benefits. The role of the CPA is to verify if actual reports submitted to the Minister of Health, Labor and Welfare by employees to pension funds, national pension funds, and defined benefit to corporate pension plans are prepared based on the appropriate pension actuarial principles to sign off and stamp them with a seal. That's all my for presentation. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Yudo. Very nice presentation. Thank you. And are there any questions about the Japanese system?
Can I ask a question about?
Yes, please use the microphone, please.
You said an actuary is required to sign off on the insurance liabilities. Is that for under financial reporting standards of 17, or is that the local statutory solvency?
Yes, that would be for solvency margin regulation based on economic value based. In Japan, IFRS 17 is not mandate. It's just for international insurance companies as on the basis of voluntary. Yes.
So based on the solvency requirement, which
Yes.
is typical of most countries right now, that you need a qualified actuary to sign off. Okay, got it.
Okay. Again, the general industry question, because I'm not sure. In Japan, there are still many defined benefit pension plan, because for pension actually, so that is the major work for them, right? IAS 19. That's follow IAS 19 or the local accounting center for the pension valuation.
Unfortunately, my specialty is for life risk company. Mr. Kenji has more detail about that.
Yeah, since I'm pension actuary, I will explain it. Historically, Japan introduced the defined benefit pension plan in 1960s. And there are many defined benefit plan. But from 2001, we introduced a defined contribution. So there are many changes, the conversion from the DB to DC. And still, but currently, big manufacturing companies still have both of the DB and DC. And this DB plan must be signed for the funding purpose and the accounting purpose. Yeah. So for both of them are, exactly speaking, the CPA, Certified Pension Actuary, this is the requirement for the funding purpose by the regulator. But for the accounting purpose, there is no regulation, but the FSA is, and also the auditor need to check normally the certified actuary need to do the actuary evaluation. Yeah. Yeah. Are there any questions? Okay. Okay, thank you very much, Yudo. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay, let's move to the next, the presenter. Okay, good. So it's okay. It's Sri Lanka. Okay, Kasun, yeah, please do the presentation.
Thank you. Good afternoon and ayubowan to everyone in the room, and good morning to everyone on the call, whatever your time zone might be. So I'll set the scene before I get started. The AASL, or the Actuarial Association of Sri Lanka, was founded in 2008. So over the last, we'll be celebrating our 20th anniversary in 2028 with this particular meeting being held in Colombo, so yay for us. What we've got is a wide range of members. So I was just looking up the stats. As at March this year, we had 136 members in total. 23 of them have the MVAC, so they're qualified with some association. Our members are spread geographically, so most of our members are based in Sri Lanka, but we've got members in India, Australia, the UK, Hong Kong, Malaysia, Singapore, the US, the Netherlands, and Canada. So
quite a spread membership. And over the last 16 years, what we've done is we've gone from just getting off the ground, so establishing the association, to now we've got to the position where we're starting to build a relationship with the regulator and requesting official recognition from them. So I'll talk through that journey first, and then you can feel free to ask some questions, if I can get the slides to keep moving.
Down. Try the down arrow.
Which one's the down arrow?
I don't know. It's a different one than I've used.
Yeah. That one's not working. Sorry, Carla. Where do I? Oh, here we go. Okay, so I'll be covering mostly the insurance industry, but there's a bit more on the pension industry as well, just setting the framework again. For the insurance industry, we've got 16 life insurers and 14 general insurers in the country. In 2014, there were new rules brought in that required the insurers to be split. So previously, we could have composite insurers where they issued both general insurance and life insurance products from the same insurance license. That was changed mainly because what we were getting was a lot of the companies were shifting the expenses from the general insurance arm into the life insurance arm. So the expenses get loaded to the participating policyholders, and the company gets to extract maximum profits from the general insurers. So the rules changed a while back. There was only one company that was exempt from that requirement to split. That's the state-owned Sri Lanka Insurance Corporation. So that was the biggest insurer in the country. And even them, they split on the 1st of February 2024. So that's where the life insurance industry is. In terms of the pension industry, we don't really have a pension industry. And the reason is superannuation, and that's why I put industry in inverted commas there. Superannuation is managed by the government. So all employees are entitled to what we call the Provident Fund, Employee Provident Fund, and the Employee Trust Fund, so two separate entities. The EPF, the Provident Fund, is managed by the central bank. So 20% of everyone's salary is sent to the central bank, and they manage the funds on behalf of the members. So it's a defined contribution scheme, and it covers all private sector and semi-government sector employees. The state workers, the government sector workers, are actually covered by the state pension scheme. And the best part of it is it's non-contributory, which means they contribute nothing to their retirement fund, and the taxpayers end up paying for it. Because it's one big superannuation fund with the EPF, the fund is quite large. So we've got 3.5 trillion rupees under management. That's about $12 billion USD under management for the EPF. The ETF, it's slightly more liberal. So some employers are able to manage the ETF fund themselves without giving it away to the Labor Department. But again, most employers just have the Labor Department manage the fund. And that fund has $400 billion of funds under administration, which is about 1.5 billion US dollars. The third form of pension that we have, it's called gratuity. So think of it as kind of long service leave. If you work for a company for X number of years, you will get a benefit when you leave that company or retire. It's dictated, so there's a minimum non-vesting period that if you leave within a period, you get nothing. Once it's vested, when you will get the fund value when you leave. That resides on the company, your employer's balance sheet, and the accounting standards dictate how that liability is valued. So LKAS, Lankan Accounting Standard 19, says that an actuarial valuation needs to be carried out at least once in 3 years. So in terms of the regulators, this slide just covers the pension providers, so the Central Bank of Sri Lanka and the Employee Trust Fund Board. So the Central Bank of Sri Lanka has the EPF department, and they're responsible for managing the EPF funds. Both of these funds are a bit controversial in the context of vast majority of their funds are invested back in treasury bonds. So we've got a bit of a conflict of interest in the central bank, where one department of the central bank is issuing treasury securities, bills and bonds, and the other department is buying those up. So they've got an unlimited supply of funds, essentially. It's an indirect form of tax because if they were invested in other funds, people may have got a higher return. So as you can see on the slide, 97% of the EPF, I checked the stats when I was preparing this slide, and I was honestly surprised that 97% of the fund is actually sitting in treasuries doing nothing really. With the ETF, it's a bit better. It's only 86% of the ETF that's invested in the government securities, which is significant. But the thing to call out here is about the remaining 12% is actually invested in fixed deposits in state-owned banks. So again, they're getting a slightly higher return than you would get with the treasury securities, but it's still, the funds end up going back into the state sector. That one side of the argument would be against it would be the fact that you get a really low return on these securities. On the other side, there is a lot less risk involved with these securities. So you can argue either way about the employees having their funds, retirement savings actually protected, or the retirement savings being invested in low yielding government securities. So that's the balance that needs to be struck. In terms of insurance regulation, we got the very creatively named Insurance Regulation Commission of Sri Lanka, or the IRCSL. So they're the main prudential regulator with oversight of all the insurance companies that operate in Sri Lanka. The commission is responsible in terms of the registration of the companies as well as the insurance brokers, and their operation, they perform those duties in terms of advising the government on insurance policy, registration of new insurance companies, annual reviews of these insurance companies and the filing of their returns to the regulator, as well as review of any reinsurance arrangements. The commission consists of a 7-member board. Quite a few of them are actually appointed, and the key thing to note here is the IRCSL, the CBSL, the central bank, the ETF board, they all ultimately report up to the finance ministry. So they come under the finance minister, and they all report up to them, but in theory, they operate independently via their boards. The commission has a number of, so the commission has the board, a 7-member board that's responsible for oversight, and underneath that, they've got the Director General who leads the IRCSL, and they've got the divisions. So their divisions are legal and enforcement, supervision, actuarial, which is the one we're most interested in, obviously, investigations, market development, and external relations, and finance and administration. The actuarial division actually has a grand total of 0 full-time employees. They actually keep bringing in consultants. So a couple of years ago, we had a full-time actuary working for the board, but once she left, they couldn't hire someone new. I think Alex mentioned it's a bit hard for government sectors to attract actuaries to work for a government department because of salary scales. I think there's a lot of that in play here. So they keep hiring consultants as required. I don't believe they even have a long-term agreement with the consultancy. The role of that division is meant to be providing actuarial advice to the commissions, ensuring a robust supervisory framework, reviewing statutory reports, which is the most important function, I guess, and reviewing own risk solvency assessment. So under our risk-based capital rules, companies can opt to have own risk models, but quite honestly, I've never seen anyone use that in Sri Lanka. And I work in Australia, and I don't see that a lot happening in Australia either. So that's the IRCSL. In terms of what actuaries do in insurance companies, I've seen this change quite significantly over my career. So when I started my career in Sri Lanka for a life insurance company, and we were a really small team at that time. And when I interned for the same company when I was still in university, they were a team of 2. And I've seen that team expand to a team of 5 when I joined them, and right now they're close to 15 to 20 people. So, and that's across the whole industry. We see actuarial teams growing. So that's a great sign for our association and the industry as a whole. But the role of the actuary is still quite contained to the traditional areas. They're still calculating reserves. They're quite heavily involved in the product development, but it's the technical side, what are the features we can afford to offer, what kind of prices would we charge for these benefits, that's the kind of thing. We help a lot with business planning. Obviously, only we can help with business planning because we own the projection models. So there's a lot of business planning done by the actuarial teams, and they also review the reinsurance arrangements. When I first started my career, actually, we were administering the reinsurance arrangements. So part of my duties was preparing the reinsurance bordereaux that we luckily handed off to an ops team, but we started off there. What I haven't seen happen a lot in the country is the actuaries don't tend to stray outside the actuarial departments. We don't have a lot of actuaries who are CFOs. I can only think of one actuary who's actually stepped away from becoming an actuary and started becoming a CFO. So that's an area we'd love to develop in our association. And obviously, like, again, I work in Australia, I see a lot of insurance company CEOs and CFOs being actuaries because they understand the business really well. So ultimately, hopefully we see an actuary take over a company as the CEO. In terms of the pensions industry, one thing I probably forgot to call out in the earlier slide is there's also a form of pension that's the defined benefit scheme. So these are old employers have previously offered defined benefit schemes to them, their employees. Those have largely been shut down. I can't think of a single fund that's currently open to new members or current members, but there are a couple of them that are still grandfathered. So including my father's company, he worked there for 20 years. He gets a pension once he's retired from that company. All of those companies that have DB funds, they need an actuary to sign off on those fund valuations because they live on the balance sheet, so the company's balance sheet needs a valuation of what the pension liability is, as well as the Labor Department needs a sign off from an actuary in order to exempt them from the EPF, ETF requirements. So in terms of the IRC and the IRCSL and the AASL, historically the AASL didn't have a lot of engagement with the regulator. Even when they had a full-time actuary working for them, they didn't reach out to us, they didn't talk a lot to us. Like I said, we're a pretty young organization, and at that time, there were two things happening. As the association, we were still getting off the ground, and as I mentioned earlier, the structure of actuarial teams in insurance companies and their position and the respect that they've got has changed significantly over the last 8 years. That's how long it's been, and it's changed significantly. So this is the first year we've actually started engaging with the regulator. We've reached out to them. We've requested official recognition from the regulator. There was a lot of back and forth. They wanted a bunch of statistics. They wanted a proposal from us on what they get out of recognizing the ASL. So how we've positioned ourselves is we can act as the intermediary between the regulator, who tends to be hard-nosed and rules-based, and it's all black and white, and our members who actually do the day-to-day operations, who perform the calculations, who see what's happening, how the markets are changing around the world. So we play the intermediary, and we have proposed to them that we will develop a number of guidance notes. And that's the wonderful thing about these IAA meetings. That I was having a chat with someone from the IFOA yesterday who was writing standards for the UK Institute, and she obviously offered to review some of ours. So that's what we're going to be working on over the next year or so, releasing a bunch of guidance notes that here's what the regulator wants you to do, here's how we interpret the rules, provide that to the regulator for feedback, provide that to our members for feedback, provide that to the IAA for feedback, bring it all together, and we have a guidance note for our members to use. We also want to develop policy recommendations. That's a longer term goal. Right now, we're still at the very infancy of our relationship, so I don't think, like Alex mentioned, we don't have the level of respect from the IRCSO to dictate terms to them. But over time, we want to build up that reputation with them. And we want to advise them on a range of technical as well as non-technical items. The key selling point and the reason the door opened for us with the IRCSO was IFRS 17. They thankfully understand that they know nothing about IFRS 17, and they need someone to bring their staff members and the board up to speed with what's happening with IFRS 17, how things are going to change, what it means for the whole industry. So that's the other thing. IFRS 17 has been adopted in Sri Lanka as SLFRS 17, and it's not in effect right now. It comes into effect in 2026, so there's time. All the insurers are working really hard to implement IFRS 17, and what that means is over time we will be providing training to the regulator on what it means, and hopefully we get called in to update the regulatory and the capital standards once they fully wrap their heads around IFRS 17. So that was my presentation. Does anyone have questions?
Thank you very much, Kasun. Wonderful presentation. So are there any questions? Comments?
So how I understand it is that Sri Lanka has good regulations. The framework is there, but from the regulatory aspect, there are no actuarial resource at the government sectors. They're relying on external consultants. Doesn't that make it very difficult for actuaries to work in Sri Lanka? Who checks?
Yeah, that has been a major challenge for a lot of our members, right? So the appointed actuaries are struggling to communicate what's happening, and the difficulties, like the IRCSO either doesn't care or doesn't understand the difficulties because they don't have actuaries on staff. When they developed the new RBC, the risk-based capital regulations, again, if I remember, that came into effect in 14 or 15, if I remember correctly, they essentially just copy-pasted the Malaysian standard and implemented it for us. And that was a big challenge for our insurers because that wasn't tailor-made to how our market is designed. Obviously, the insurers had to bend over backwards and fit themselves into a square peg. But that's been in place for a number of years, and that is a big challenge for us.
I recall we were doing some work for another government, and the challenge was, even though you have resource at the government and you put in the training for the actuaries, which we were very proud to be part of, and then they get assigned to different departments. So I think that's something for AAA to perhaps consider, how to engage governments, especially smaller governments, in terms of the importance of having AA resource in-house. Bank Negara, like Singapore, we've also grown very much. So we do have a good actuarial sector, but I'm sad to say on the pension side, in the government side, they've actually wound up the government actuarial department looking at pensions. So it is kind of an ongoing education that we have the resource. We're not very visible, but we should be an important part of the economy.
Yeah, definitely.
Let me add something as well. That's correct what Hassan was saying, like, in 2015, actually, then we have the RBC coming up. We actually had an actuary for the regulator, and World Bank helped the regulator to bring the RBC implemented in the country. And later on, actually, unfortunately, that actually did not stay with the regulator. Afterward, I think they were struggling really, struggling a lot to, acquire an actuary. Its main problem is the salary structure, that they can't, absorb an actuary because the government salaries are very low, and they have tried several times to go to the ministry to get the approval, but they have not got or to increase the salary to get an actuary. Actually, they are trying very hard, and I think lately they have issued, advertisement also to, get a consulting firm, not a consultant, an individual consultant, consulting firm to recruit. But that also did not work because because they were saying it's very expensive. Right? Actually, from the ASL point of view and the IAA point of view, that we tried to get regulator into a conversation with the same topic on the relationship with the regulator when we had the same meeting, Asia meeting in Colombo in 2017. So we got the regulator and the other, expertise from the industry to talk about it. At that point, there was a little bit of, the regulator started some kind of conversation, but later on again it has gone down. But it's really important that for them to have an actuary. Like we are running RBC, as Cousin saying, without an actuary with the regulator, but we are as actuaries working in the country that you are working for Sri Lankan companies and I'm working for Sri Lankan companies. So we go through quite a lot of hardship with the regulator because we do not get very constructive feedback for our work, and then the review feedback is not coming from them. So I think this is what we hope as association, that this recognition will move forward and do something good.
If I can just add to that, sorry, the Malaysian experience, we were like that, I think 25 years ago, very few actuaries. The long-term plan that I saw the government did was they sent students out. So these are sponsored students. So I would say a lot of the current government actuaries in Malaysia are sponsored, and they have a bond, so they have to serve those 6 years. So that's how they started holding on to their staff, as well as restructuring the remuneration.
Yeah, so I was also bonded for 5-6 years because MAS paid for my school fees. Maybe one idea that I would offer would be, so in Singapore, there are many SMEs who cannot afford a chief technology officer. So government actually come up with a scheme of, CTO as a service or CTO for rents, something like that. So a few SMEs will share a CTO, right? Because oftentimes the SME's needs may not be a full-time job, right? So at least the expert is able to earn a meaningful salary, and then the SMEs are able to have their also CTO function on a part-time basis. So I guess it's either IAA or it could be IIS also, right? Come up with a similar scheme where you have senior actuaries who may be willing to step up to be a panel to serve, let's say, 3 countries at a time, 4 countries at a time, right? So it will become more affordable, and the consultant would also have a meaningful salary. That's one. I think the second thing is oftentimes maybe government officials may have a lot of pride and ego. So the question is, are we able to sort of appeal to that, right? Get their peers in IIS to say that, okay, you may want to show that you have made progress in these ABCD regulations, right? So then that is a demand for actuarial services, right? Then you get that progression up. Yeah, so they also want to showcase to the world that they are a good regulator, right? Yeah, so have their friends nudge them, something like that.
Thank you. I think maybe ASIL can consider that moving forward to have a conversation with the regulator.
I think so. Even for us, our first letter that we sent to the regulator, the first paragraph, our president said, we are a full member of the IAA. That carried a lot of weight with the regulator. So you're right. We can go to the, the IAIS through the IAA, get their support, push down from that angle, as well as provide the support from within our association as well. So thanks for that.
Okay, thank you very much. Kasan, thank you very much for your wonderful presentation. Thank you. Okay, so the next presenter is this is the Nepal, the Prachana. Prachana, can you talk? Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Can I start?
Yes, please.
Okay. Hello, everyone. So thank you so much for giving me this opportunity to share our journey in terms of how we went about developing a relationship with the regulator, and also highlight some of the collaboration we have done with them and how we are going to aim to maintain that relationship going forward for at least for a couple of years. Next slide, please. So, so the Nepal Insurance Authority, it's the regulatory body of all the insurance companies. So if you could highlight others. So there are roughly 37 companies, 14 life, 14 non-life, 7 micro-insurers, and 2 local reinsurers companies. We also have Life Insurance Association and Non-Life Insurance Association. And the Actuarial Society is actually a not-for-profit organization, which was established in 2019. We currently have 65 members, and most of those members are actuarial students, and there are some actuarial professionals, but really I'm the only fellow currently in the country, and we are aiming to get more. There are few students who are going to become an associate actuary very soon. So in terms of the statutory duties for an actuary, it's quite limited. It's the actual annual actuarial valuations for life, non-life reinsurers. For microinsurers, they're still having a discussion whether it's maybe once in 3 years. And for life companies, if you want to bring out new product, the product design and the pricing has to be certified by appointed actuaries. On non-life side, probably 90% of our business is tariff. So the involvement of actuaries in non-life side is extremely low. But we expect these duties to expand because last June, we implemented risk-based supervision. And in this July, we will be implementing risk-based capital. So hopefully through these new changes, we are moving from compliance to some sort of principle-based regulation. We expect more involvement of actuaries. In terms of challenges that we have faced, and this is something what we've been working with NIA for quite a long time, is almost all our actuarial work is outsourced abroad. None of the companies have in-house valuation or pricing models. And when we discuss with the CEOs, a lot of them just see actuarial work as a compliance exercise. So they are not incentivized to invest more on human capital to actually build the capacity in-house, which means there's a lack of demand for actuarial professionals. So even though we have a university which has got actuarial program, all these students that comes out, pretty much they don't have a job. And lack of exposure, even if they are hired by the company, there's lack of exposure to core actuarial jobs, and there's no interaction with appointed actuary. So this is something we have tried multiple different ways of how to resolve this issue. So next slide, please. So how did we go about building relationship? So before we set up in 2019, we spoke to a number of stakeholders, regulators, insurers, students, and it became very evidently quite clear that our industry, because it's rules-based regulation, is heavily driven by regulator. So we did get some sort of like an informal approval from the regulator to set up a society. And at that time, the regulator's concern was, the Minister of Finance was kind of having an issue that a lot of the money was going abroad. These foreign reserves were kind of depleting because of that. Although the true picture, it wasn't that big amount, but they just, because they didn't know, so they just felt it was too big, and they clearly saw the need of having the society. And I think for us, it was quite a unique position because we were a bit lucky that in 2020, I went to work for the regulator. So before that, we do, and I did have appointed, I mean, they still do have a foreign actuary. So I worked as an in-house actuary for 4 years there. And one of the things we started doing was improving the quality of actuarial work through supervision exercise. One thing we noticed was a lot of it was very minimum standard of work that was coming through because the actuaries, the actuarial firms, they sort of knew there was nobody to challenge them from the insurer side. There was nobody to challenge them from regulatory side. So one of the things we tried to change was there was a lot of interactions, a lot of challenges, which over the year, we also changed the policies, valuation policies, and kind of clearly defining what the actuaries' roles were. So that helped to improve the quality of the work. But at the same time, we had NIA staff actually being engaged in some of these actuarial tasks, which meant that also built that capacity within the regulator. And one thing, this is something that we consciously did, because before I was there, what used to happen is the insurers appointed actuary would have a direct contact with the regulator actuaries, which both of them were outside of Nepal. The work was outside of Nepal, the discussions were outside of Nepal, which meant that there was not that much happening within the country. So what we did is that we said the insurers appointed actuaries were not allowed to have a direct contact with the regulators actuaries without the insurer and the NIA staff being present. But we'll try to resolve issues with the insurers first, and if that doesn't get resolved, then we will kind of interact. We will have a meeting with the insurers appointed actuaries. And every time the insurers kind of said, we don't understand, we don't have a skill set, the regulator was kept encouraging, saying, then if you don't have that skill set in your staff, maybe you need to start hiring actuarial analysts to help you in that area. So that's something.
Everybody, please wait for a while. It looks like the floor is being frozen, freezing.
Maybe tell her to come out and come back.
Okay.
She should be able to hear.
Yes. Can you make sure everybody else can hear us still? So
Okay.
on our side?
Okay, so can someone hear us? We just want to confirm,
She's out. She's coming.
Okay. Please wait for a while.
She was in a roll. She was so good and suddenly froze.
Just in case, so Luang Xing, from Vietnam, can you hear us now? If you can hear us, please unmute.
Yes,
Okay.
Yep.
Okay. So,
Sorry.
you're, okay.
there she is.
Pecha,
Yeah.
okay,
Sorry,
we are now reconnected. No problem. Okay.
So what we also got was we got ASN members to volunteer on some of the regulatory tasks, especially when we were working on developing the risk-based capital framework. So it was a win-win situation for both parties because ASN members got to work on a core actuarial work as well as on the regulatory front because they are quite resource constrained. So they were able to meet some of their tasks. So ASN members has been participating in number of programs organized by NIA. So now a regulator every year sets up a program specifically for the ASN members and the university for the university students who are taking the actual science course. And all this time, I think what we've been doing is what UNDP Milliman Global Actuarial Initiative really changed for us. So that program was initiated in Nepal in January 2023, and we have the regulator as the chair of that committee. And what that brought, that program was, it helped us, especially ASN, to come up with more strategic plan in terms of how to build that relationship. And having UNDP particularly really brought the fact that, some kind of supported, like with NIA, to take us the actual work more seriously. If I could take next slide, please. So I'll quickly take you through what we have achieved through that program. Sorry, next slide. So as part of that guideline, what we have said is that every insurer now needs to have an appointed actuaries, which wasn't the case. It was only a requirement for life side. But now we have said, reinsurers, microinsurers, general insurers, they also need to have an appointed actuary. But what we have done is we have set a different eligibility criteria. So for example, in general insurance, you don't have to be fellow, you could be an associate, but you'll need to have certain post-qualification experience. But if you actually have an in-house associate actuary, then your qualification requirement, post-associate qualification requirement, is actually even lower. So that to incentivize the companies to start building their own appointed actuaries function. So these appointed actuary will have the same statutory duties as before, but then they will be required to provide more further input into RBC and risk-based supervision. So far in Nepal, I think IFRS 17 will probably be delayed for a couple of years. So at least for now, we've tried to ensure that the appointed actuaries are giving feedback on RBC and RBS. The guideline also mentions that each insurer must employ at least one actuarial analyst in an actuarial role. So if you have a pricing or valuation, at least in a statutory role, you need to have an analyst working on it. And when the company supplies a statutory reporting to NIA, the analyst also must sign the statement of declaration showing how they've assisted the appointed actuary in that work. And that statement of declaration is done with the appointed actuary and the CEO. We've also mentioned that the appointed actuary needs to provide certain number of hours of training to these analysts, and the appointed actuary actually needs to provide feedback on the actual work, analyst work, so that it becomes part of the appraisal process. And then analysts must comply with the professional code of conduct that will be established by ASN. And another thing they have is that the insurers for for non-life and non-life and reinsurers, they need to have in-house valuation model and pricing model within 3 years starting from this July. Whereas on the life side and the microinsurers, they will have to have valuation and pricing model in-house in Nepal within 5 years time. So this guideline, UNDP, Milliman, ASN, NIA, insurers, we all work together. We went through a long consultation period on this. So it got issued only last week. So it is a big milestone for us, and especially for ASN, because it officially recognizes ASN as, what we provide in terms of the role of actuaries. So that was quite a big milestone for us. And going forward, I think definitely what we know for next 3 to 5 years, what we'll do is, even with the regulation, it requires each insurers to set up an actual function. I mean, it doesn't go into detail of what it looks like. So one of our tasks is going to be supporting the industry, supporting the regulator on what that really means, and also coming up with the plan on to support the insurers on the implementation of actuarial analyst function. So kind of supporting the HR team of the companies of, when they hire actual students, if they come up with certain exams, what does that really mean for the company? We are giving trainings on non-life companies, especially on helping how the actual analyst can support with actually doing the RBC calculation themselves. We are also going to support NIA on their actual capacity building, because even with NIA, what has happened is because they're implementing RBC, ORSA is coming, there's a risk-based supervision which has already been implemented. They do recognize they need a lot of support. So that's something we'll be doing, and ASN will continue to volunteer on the regulatory projects. And one of the things we have in pipeline is now to sign a memorandum of understanding between NIA, ASN, university that offers the actual course, and the insurer. So yeah, that's where I'll stop for now. And if you have any question, I'm happy to answer.
Thank you very much, Rachana. A very wonderful presentation. Are there any questions or other comments? Yeah.
Pracha, thank you very much for the presentation. I just wanted to get a little bit more clarity and information on how your members are volunteering for the regulator, in what kind of projects, and how does it go?
So one of the key project was, because our mortality table is quite outdated. It was based, it still is based on 2001 census data. And, it hasn't been, it's very simplistic, gender, only based on age. It's a gender neutral. There's no mortality improvement. So there has been quite a need of us to change the mortality table. But then, initial step is to make sure the companies were storing the data in a right format, so that if in case we do wanted to update the table, they were actually in place. So we got the actual student to kind of come up with the data format, and that work actually got issued by the regulator. There was a meeting held with the industry of what we were looking from the data and for how long, and what would be done with the data to improve to revise our mortality table. On a risk-based capital, what happened was we worked with the World Bank since we've been working with them from 2021. And it's a whole new concept for everyone. So especially things like even coming up with interest rate risk, because we, as Nepal, we don't have a risk-free yield curve, because our treasury doesn't trade as, it's not liquid. Treasury bills are not that liquid. So we have to come up with our own interest rate yield curve. And what the ASN member did a lot of research on what different countries were working on to create their risk-free yield curve. So doing all those background work, we, as part of the RBC, we have some kind of, to calculate the credit risk, there's some different type of categories for different assets. So, there were a number of ways where the ASN members were then, so basically what they did was they did a lot of research and then presented to the NIA staff. So it was more for the NIA rather than from the industry. So in that sense, and part of it, like ASN and NIA would do separate, like risk-based supervision training to the analysts, so that they become much more marketable, so that they have certain skills when they go to the company. So those were the ways we have done so far.
Thank you. Are there any questions or comments? Okay. Okay, thank you so much. Okay, let's go to the next presenter from Vietnam. So, Leon. Okay. Do you have a presentation material or you do not have?
I don't have.
Can you say again? Can you say something?
Can you hear me?
Okay, now I can hear you. Okay. Oh, sorry. We can hear you just at the greetings, but after then, because of some reasons, we cannot hear you. Can you say it? Yeah. Okay, I can hear you now.
Yep.
Okay, can you keep talking, please? Okay, please keep talking.
Yep. Inviting me to this
Okay, yeah. Please keep talking.
insurance, 17 insurance companies, 31 general insurance, 2 reinsurers, and about 20 brokers. But on my 40 qualified and 50 staff.
Luang, I'm sorry, perhaps you're breaking off. We cannot hear you properly. Can you get off camera? Maybe that will help your voice carry better through the speakers.
Thank you. So for 40, 25,
You're cutting off, Luang.
I have the experience that in Vietnam, sometimes the Wi-Fi connection is bad, and maybe he can switch to 4G, maybe better sometime. Can you change to 4? The Wi-Fi connection is not good. Benjamin? And Daniel?
Yep.
Yep. Okay.
Can you hear me now?
Again? Can you change to 4G? Maybe the Wi-Fi connection is not smooth.
Is it better?
Try 4G instead of Wi-Fi.
Yeah. As you for
Now it's a little bit better. Okay, you go
Yeah.
to speak now. You can go now.
Yeah. In Vietnam, we have 2 main regulatory bodies. First one is Insurance Supervisory Authority, that supervise own instrument. We have like product, hardware, supporting. Another one, and the Ministry of Commerce that oversees the competition between countries. Growth in insurance quite much, but for
Can I use the zero to talk to you? You talk to me by the zero. I will speak. Use the.
So Daniel, will you call him?
Yeah, I will use the phone to talk to him, and maybe the zero connection is better sometimes.
Feels like when the game before.
You can survive anywhere.
Okay, you speak. Okay, speak now.
Okay, can you hear me now?
Yeah, it's good.
I can hear because the line is not good now. Okay, so now I can speak now?
Yes, go on.
Yeah. should I start with the regulatory bodies? In Vietnam, we have two key regulatory bodies. That is the
Good.
Regulators may find out one.
You turn the mic off. You should turn on the mic.
okay.
Now it's okay.
Okay. In Vietnam, we have two key regulatory bodies that oversee insurance and pension industry. That is the first one and very important one is the Insurance Supervisory Authority under Ministry of Finance that oversees all aspects of insurance market. The second one is the Vietnam Competition Authority under the Ministry of Commerce that oversees the competition and protect customers. For the role of actuaries in insurance and pension company, I think it's quite similar to other markets. However, for general insurance sector, the role of actuaries is still quite limited. Now they mostly do with valuation and pricing. But under the new requirement of the law, the role of actuaries in general insurance is now expanding. For the statutory role of appointed actuaries, I think very extensive compared to other countries. Appointed actuaries in Vietnam must get involved in product development, policy wording, pricing, valuation. He must certify it, surplus distribution, including dividend distribution to policyholder, and solvency calculation, the policy fund management, investment and AOM, risk management, including reinsurance and policy transfer. And also, he must get involved in experience studies, reporting, include financial condition report. For life insurance, the requirement for appointed actuary is he must be a qualified actuary, but for general insurance, now the requirement is still very mild. The appointed actuary in a general insurance company, he just need 2 actuary exams, but in the next 2 years, he must be an associate, and in the next 4 years, he must be a qualified. So the requirement is getting stricter for general sector. You can see that for actuarial profession in Vietnam, it is now developing. So only the role of appointed actuary is regulated. In fact, there is no regulation for other roles, actuarial roles. Do you think it's good for the development of actuarial profession in Vietnam? In fact, the regulatory authority relies on the code of conduct by other actuarial associations that our actuary belong to. However, the requirements for establishing an actuarial association in Vietnam are very strict. I will explain later. So, how can we ensure that the actuarial work meets industry standard and legal requirements? Under the regulation, there are some specific regulation for pricing, reserving, solvency calculation and reporting, investment policy illustrations, disclosure, and it relies much on the role of the appointed actuary. However, up to now, we have no actuarial standards and guidance because you can see that in Vietnam, we have no actuarial association. We just have one actuarial committee under the Insurance Association of Vietnam. and we are seeking to establish an actuarial association. There are some difficulties to establish an actuarial association in Vietnam. The first, the requirement is very strict. Firstly, we must get support and approval from both the Ministry of Finance, our insurance regulatory authority, and the second one is the Ministry of Home Affairs. And from the experience of other associations, it takes a lot of time to get their approval. The next one, we must have a minimum number of members. And now for an actuarial society, we need 50. It's okay for the market now. We must have an office. Must have staff. But I think more importantly, in order to force the actuarial association to be to effective, we must have some regulations, laws that recognize the role of the actuarial association. And now there is no such regulation. For insurance associations, there are some regulation about their role in the law, but there's none of such law for actuarial association. For communication with regulator, I think we have a quite good communication with regulator. I think we could do various ways, face-to-face meeting, or even a virtual meeting. Or we could send them email, or we can call them via phone. Either it is formal or informal. And the insurance authority, whenever they want to make some regulation change or new regulation, they often get, particularly relating to actuarial matters, they often get our feedback or proposal from the actuarial community. In Vietnam, we have an actuarial working group, which consists of appointed actuary of life insurance companies to support the regulator with actuarial matters. Vietnam has issued some new regulations, and the actuarial community made a lot of proposals. Some of them have been accepted by the authority. How the actuaries do in order to ensure that our compliance with the regulatory requirements. This relies mostly on the role of appointed actuaries. The appointed actuaries required to supervise and reporting the compliance with the regulator. He must certify the pricing and valuation, and he must report now. So he must report on product selling, disclosure, commission payment, fund management, particularly for investment-linked product and pension product. And he must send a regular report to the regulator, particularly when there are some action taken by the company that are issues that may threaten the solvency of the company. And the appointed actually must serve on the investment committee, particularly for investment-linked product. How the actuarial associations develop and execute actuarial code of conduct. In the have actuarial code of conduct which has been issued by the Insurance Association of Vietnam. However, as an actuarial committee under the Insurance Association, to be frank, we don't know how to execute our actuarial code of conduct effectively. And now, as I said before, we rely on our actuaries to follow the code of conduct of the association he belongs to. About the collaboration with the regulator, I think we have a quite good collaboration with the regulator. As I said before, we have an actuarial working group and we have a lot of meeting and discussion held with regulator, particularly when we make some proposal to revise the current regulation. And also we have meetings and discussion held by the industry body with the participation of regulator. We have a meeting and discussion by actuarial committee, and normally the regulator will send someone to attend it. And now we have UNDP, just like Nippon, UNDP and minimum to support us with GAIN project, a global actuarial initiative to enhance Vietnam actuarial capacity. And we have a lot of discussion with UNDP and the regulator. And also we organize some workshops and conferences. And the industry and actually working group is quite active in giving feedback and proposal to the regulator. However, some of our proposal has not been heard or not been accepted to our expectation. Whenever the regulator have a new regulation or say the draft a new regulation or revise current regulation, they must go a very long survey with stakeholders. So they organize a lot of meetings and discussion with many stakeholders. And also the industry, the actuaries will get involved in such discussion or meeting. And actually, particularly for appointed actuaries, a life insurance company, very active in making proposal to the regulator. And such a consultation takes many rounds, discussions and feedbacks. For the ethical and responsible practices, in fact, the regulatory framework in Vietnam requires the appointed actuaries to treat the customer fairly, say in a surplus distribution, should be independent in doing their duty, to be timely in reporting to regulators, to adopt professional standards. However, it's not clear, as I said before. In Vietnam, we have no actuarial standards for the local market, so we rely on the actuarial standards of other markets that the actuary belong to. Also, for appointed actuaries, whenever the regulator approve a new actuaries, they require the appointed actuary must be ethical. That means that they have no breach of any rules of law of any countries or regulation of any actuarial association. As I said before, now up to now we have no guidelines, actuarial guidelines, and that's why this in fact the regulator encourage companies to follow beyond the regulatory requirements, but it's just something like just a verbal, not written support. What is our long-term relationship with the regulator? I think we must be very proactive, very cooperative, and supportive to them, and we must build trust with the regulators. And as we are in Asian country, we must respect the regulator, and we should arrange access to international association or consultant for the regulator. You could see that in Vietnam, the regulators, they have no qualified actuary, and they have, I think, a very limited actuarial skill set. And in order to set up an insurance association in Vietnam, an actuarial association in Vietnam, we must firstly get the support from the regulator, the Ministry of Finance. But we hope that we could have a very good support from them in the coming time, particularly with the new regulations, the support from UNDP project. That's all for my presentation. If you have any questions, please let me know.
Okay, thank you, Don. Thank you very much. And Daniel, thank you so much for your help too. So if there are any questions, it's sometimes difficult, but I think we can understand most of the presentation, right? Okay, yeah. Is there any questions? Okay. Okay, so since, thank you very much, and Luong, very good presentation. And since we have that about, okay, so, okay.
I think I can make some comment about the current situation in Vietnam about actually. The good thing is that they have a new insurance law, and they listed write down officially the role or the actuary in the law, very high level insurance law, and they require the appointed actuary to be independent from the manager. So if you were an appointed actuary, you cannot act as vice president of the company or CEO of the company. So actually many appointed actuaries, when they were promoted to higher position like a VP or manager works, they need to retire from the appointed actuary. So appointed actuary need to be just focused on valuation or product. That's very special.
Okay, so actually must be independent from the business, basically.
Just separate from the management team, management role.
Okay.
Vice president or CEO of the company.
Okay.
Yeah, that's very special.
One question is,
The market.
Yeah, you can add something. Speak. You can speak.
I think such corporate governance is good for the market because the role of appointed actuary is separated from other, like CFO or CEO or vice president.
Yeah. That's why I mentioned in here.
Okay.
Yeah.
Is there any question? Okay. Okay, so for the rest of the time, let's move to the several discussions. So at first, I think for the last three countries, like developing the countries, we realize that there are kind of the common the issues, like the lack of the actuarial expertise in the government, and also the sometimes I think that the actuarial standard or the code of conduct are not clear, but I would like to understand, what is the major challenges. For example, in the Vietnam, you guys are trying to develop the actuarial society, but and it's kind of it's developing, but what is the main obstacles you want to overcome. Maybe, if you can share, some of the, the challenges that someone may give the, the good advice on that. Maybe the Daniel or the cousin or the Prechana. Do you have any comment or how to how to develop the more advanced actuarial standard in the actuarial society, or how to develop the actuarial society? From that point of view, what is the biggest challenges you are encountering now? Maybe the Prichana, can you say something, your idea?
Yeah. So I would say the biggest challenge is what we have faced is trying to demonstrate to the regulator and the insurer is the value of actual work, and how do we demonstrate that has been quite a challenge. We've done a number of presentations, but it actually doesn't work. And the only way it's through the supervision process, where every time we challenge then they start to understand the concept. And also, sometimes having, development agency like World Bank or UNDP come in and kind of a little bit reinforcing to the regulator, saying, okay, why is there a need? Is something that's been useful. I do understand some of the concern, the concern raised in Vietnam, where even in Nepal, when it comes to building an actual capacity within the regular NIA itself, is quite difficult, because whenever you need to come up with a new position, new remuneration, you need an approval from the Minister of Finance. And what that means is, if for us, it's not only NIA that we need to ensure they understand us, but we also need to make sure institutions like, Minister of Finance and other ministries, in which case UNDP has been very helpful. And UNDP World Bank has been quite helpful, because we have gone through them to kind of do that. Also, the issue with the association like us, we are quite young, and that hierarchy of regulators. So what we haven't been able to do is give that independent opinion on regulatory topics. Sometimes some of the regulatory guidelines that comes out is not actually sound, but something for us is very difficult to go publicly and put our view, which might contradict to the regulator, is quite difficult. And we are not at that stage yet to give our independent opinion. So for now, I mean, my contract has ended with NIA, and it's going to be a first year where we will be working slightly independent with the regulator, and see how it happens. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Are there any comments? Prachana, so one question is, I understand that, in Nepal, there is a lack of the, the recognition of the actuarial role or actuarial responsibility. Is it true for only the regulators, or is it true for even for all the stakeholders, including insurers, or for the student, etc.?
It's I would say both the insurers and the regulators, because for insurers, they see actuarial just as completing the financial statement for a year. So they see it as a compliance exercise. And what happens is, because it's quite technical, they don't get that much support from their appointed actuaries, and maybe because they don't pay them well enough. And what happens is, they see actuarial as quite a black box, and they try to avoid as much as they can. They know it's actuaries are quite expensive, so they see us as a big cost. So so, and especially when you don't have a valuation model or any sorts of model, if you can't do the analysis, it's very difficult to get the insight of your business. So without that, you cannot truly understand how actuaries can add value. Same thing with the regulator. Students are trying, but like some of the senior students who are close to associate have actually left the country. They have gone to UK, different countries, because they don't see any scope, career development, any scope, or even actually they are very worried that they might not qualify staying here because they are not going to get the right experience to actually qualify as a fellow.
Thank you. Are there anyone who can share some of the experience, how to expand or how to improve the recognition? Like maybe the Sri Lanka, you had some experience, right?
Yeah, I think so. Initially, I would definitely echo what she just said. It's hard to convince the regulator that they need to have an actuary when they don't see the value of having an actuary. And I'm allowed to say this because I'm an actuary, but we're not great at communicating our value. We're great at building models and calculating numbers, but we're not great at communicating up the chain what it means, the value that we're adding, even though we're adding a lot of value. So that's, I think, where we're struggling. The regulator is not convinced exactly that they need actuaries. They understand that the Life Insurance Act or the Insurance Act says every company needs an actuary and it needs to be signed off, and you're submitting returns to the regulator, but the regulator doesn't seem to have the need to say someone needs to scrutinize this and understand what's going on and challenge the insurers at that level. What I have seen change over the last couple of years, as I mentioned in my presentation, is the value of the actuary in the insurance company has changed. And I think IFRS 17 is another good catalyst because accountants and actuaries need to work together. There's no, like previously we calculated one number in the balance sheet and that's pretty much it. That's all they care about, the one number, the liability we calculated. Now, from the P&L to the balance sheet, everything needs actuarial input to calculate. So as the companies are appreciating their actuarial teams more and more, I think the insurers will start hearing the CEOs kind of communicating, oh, it's actuaries who are driving this. And my gut feel is that that'll drive the need for the regulatory body to have their own actuarial team, because the CEOs they're regulating and the CFOs are talking about the actuarial teams, and that'll make the regulator understand where their gap is. Fingers crossed. And the second thing I'm hoping will happen is once we train up the regulator, again, they'll see the value that we really add to the insurance value chain and understand our value.
Yeah.
Question, may I know how many, or if there are any insurers who have failed in your countries in the past decade or so?
I'll let Tanuja correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm pretty sure we haven't had any failures. Like in the last 20 years, we had one bank fail.
Okay.
So that's about the greatest impact that's had in the financial services sector.
So there was a very big financial crash in one group of companies where the insurance was the biggest the business, but everything else crashed, not the insurance.
Okay, so because I was thinking from a communication angle, me being my aggressive self, is that hopefully the one that failed is the one that is without actuary, and then drive the public opinion to say that, at least in international well-managed companies, they actually use actuaries, then hopefully they'll drive more demand for that.
Or could you flip the switch on that group of companies and say, look, the insurance company survived because of the actuary?
But sometimes you need someone to fail in order to build that story, honestly.
Can I just chime in on that question? Sorry, Ray. Just quickly, I think it's a great point, and we had a great case study in Australia in 2001, HIH, and I mean, there was some actuarial involvement there, but actually much less than its peers. And where things got to off the back of a long inquiry and so on was an increased role for actuaries in the market. So it is a great, you know, putting it bluntly, a great opportunity when something like that happens for us to be able to explain our value.
Yeah.
I already know the answer to this question when I ask it because I've worked in almost every country here except Nepal, I believe. But it occurs to me that if you took a long view of the profession 5-10 years out, most all of the countries face major problems with things like food security, with natural disasters and earthquakes in Nepal. You've got flooding and cyclone issues and certainly in Vietnam, water issues in India. These are a lot of things the IIA is kind of working on. And in other countries, these are things actuaries are very involved in. You know, Nat Cat resilience, you know, how do you, you know, help, you know, formulate systems that, you know, encourage better building practices. I know in Sri Lanka you had the conference last year, didn't you? We had some climate sessions. I think Khalees came and spoke to that. She works for me. So I guess in terms of, and I know the answer to my question is that you're struggling so much to just keep the regulators happy, and the supply of actuaries is so small we can't really think too much outside of what we're doing. But I'm just wondering if it's worth at some point, you know, thinking outside the box a bit about what actuaries can do, and thinking about ways actuaries could be adding value to governments, to insurers, to even supranational organizations and other places, because we've been doing this in other countries quite successfully. I mean, there's a good bit of actuarial work that goes on, say, in Australia, on things like, you know, resilience planning for, I mean, I'm not even talking about climate yet, I'm just talking about just resilience planning against extreme disasters, earthquakes, floods, all this sort of stuff. So it's been interesting listening to this discussion that there's been almost no discussion of any of those topics, you know, with regard to what the actuaries are doing. And as somebody who's spent a lot of my career in that space, I just find that interesting. You know, that whole area of the profession's kind of not being focused on. I'm not meaning that as a criticism, it's just an observation, probably of no value, because again, having worked in all your countries, I kind of understand why things are the way they are, but wonder if maybe, you know, at some point there's some value in having to think outside the box about how we could do more. That might also help to attract young students to stay in the countries and, you know, feel like they don't have to just go to the UK to do some work if there was meaningful work in the countries tackling some of these problems. And I understand getting paid for that is the problem. But anyway.
Okay, thank you very much. Just probably one of the things, you know, IAA can help, because, you know, one of the IAA's mission is, you know, to have the good relationship with the supranational, you know, the organization. Also, since, you know, each of the countries does not necessarily have the enough, you know, capability or knowledge, that's why, you know, we need to, you know, work together. Yeah, thank you. Good comment. Okay, so, the final comment, please.
I'm just trying to put it in a different angle. Is there anything out there that is like a minimum reference point or a guideline in terms of nation building or the governance and management of risk that has been published before for governments? That, because you're talking about governments, right? So, and then following maybe whatever UN or whatever, how the world grades first world, developing, emerging, whatever. Is there a reference point that that has been never published on from the insurance point of view, that there is, you know, a recommendation how many, what are some of the governance structures, you know, actuaries present in where, and, you know, conflict side of things, or if there isn't, is there an opportunity to develop that from an IAA point of view? I don't know.
Yes, I mean, there are plenty of examples. In fact, I wrote a paper, the Geological Society of London, of all places, on using earthquake modeling to help disaster resilience across Asia and reduce death. and how you could really use actuarial and CAT modeling tools to actually inform ways to protect the public from extreme earthquake risk, which is a big deal in obviously many countries like Nepal. So I think there are resources like that out there, and I think it would be interesting to do a little census or just a very quick project. You know, maybe we could use ChatGPT AI even to find some examples of that, because I know there are actuaries that, from my COP27 and 28 stuff, just working in that, you know, there are actuaries in Africa and various places, you know, working in supras on some of these problems. So might be good to find a few examples. Sorry, I didn't mean to distract the discussion off in this tangent.
Yeah. Where I was talking about, that's great. Where I was talking about reference points was more hearing from different societies who are trying to get that better interaction with governments and how they're developing, as in, you know, how many actuaries are actually employed in the government, in which particular area, etc. Perhaps from top level down, or an association level down, like an IAA, there could be a list of recommendations of what is the minimum requirements as that industry evolves. And that could be used by associations or societies to go and have conversations and dialogue. And in some cases, then IAA could also come in as that dialogue to say these are some of the minimum requirements that countries could aspire to based on as the industry go, because you need to manage risk, because you don't want something that fails and hurt the citizens, etc., etc.
And just one quick thought to follow up that, because I think it's a great point. You know, I'm not clear, but I know there'll be people here at this meeting who are clear how the IAA and the International Association of Insurance Supervisors connect on this sort of topic. But that'd be something to think about, whether there's a way to go through the IAIS to sort of get that message out as this is a global standard that countries ideally ought to meet, whatever it is.
Okay, it may be the good point, because, you know, if we can develop such kind of the reference point, you know, that you guys, you know, can use it when you negotiate with the, you know, the regulators. Okay. It's kind of the, you know, the one of the, we can say this is the kind of the examples of the best, you know, the practices. Yes. Okay. Jill, with the final question, final comment, please.
Okay, good, because then we have the break. So just a comment with respect to like the supras. So just as a reminder, so Lisa Wade coordinates the supranational relationships, and we have relationship managers and deputies assigned for all of them. So this is also too just another resource that you have. And I was actually just texting her about some of the comments that were being made about, I think it was Nepal was saying, or Sri Lanka, or not Sri Lanka, but Vietnam was saying that, you know, the World Bank and OECD kind of comes in and says you should have actuaries and stuff. So that was good to hear. So, but maybe we can also help them with that messaging. So, but again, all supra work needs to go, like but the IA needs to go through Lisa Wade. So, so just keep that in mind. Thank you.
Yeah. Noted. Okay. Okay. Thank you very much, everybody, and particularly for the 5 presentators, Alex Yuzo, and Kasun Prechana and Luong. Sorry if my pronunciation is wrong, but thank you very much, and thank you very much for your contribution.
Should I tell people that we're
Yes, I think.
People hanging out.
Okay, good evening, everyone. I hope everyone online can hear me. Good day to everyone who's joining online as well. Sally is still not there, right? No, yeah, okay. Sorry, yeah, this is the last session for the whole week. Yeah, just. Yeah, so. Yes. I think it's a very good topic to end all our sessions with the professionalism. So what our expectation of this panel session is to talk about how different countries within the region deliver professionalism education. as a part of the actuarial education. Professionalism education is as important as the technical education for actuaries because the professionalism makes us a professional in the society. That's why we are in becoming, when we are becoming an FMA of IAA, it is a requirement that an actuarial association should have the actuaries code of conduct and how it is practiced and what is the process of practice of that association. So in becoming an actuary, it's a must to have gone through professionalism courses after examination to obtain the qualification, or with some of the actuarial professional bodies who provide actuarial education needs all students to go through few hours of professionalism materials during their study period as well. So we would like to know what different associations, different jurisdictions, how they practice, how they deliver the professionalism education throughout the actuarial education and maybe after becoming an actuary as well. So we have invited 4 panelists to join with us today, and 3 of them are joining in person and 1 panelist joining online. So let me introduce them first of all. Sally Calder, she's actually joining online. She's based in UK. Sally is education actuary at the IFOA with a background in corporate pensions, experienced in examinations and assessment for the IFOA and another professional body. Member of the IFOA's Professional Skills Working Group with experience in developing, reviewing, and delivering learning and assessment materials on professionalism and ethics. And our next panelist is from USA. She is Jennifer Gillespie. Is that correct? Yeah. She's the past chair of SOA's Professionalism Education Management Committee and a long time and current facilitator for the SOA's Associateship Professionalism course and Fellowship Admission course. Thank you for being with us, Jennifer. And next one is not a new person to me, like, we know quite a long time, Isa Benjamin. Benjamin. Yeah, she's the president of Actuarial Society of Malaysia, experienced in actuarial areas of life insurance, IFRS 17 impact, capital management, reserving, pricing, etc., and takaful, that is Islamic insurance, asset liability management, funding management of social security schemes. Welcome, Isa. Paul Sergio Catono. Is that correct, my pronunciation? Paul is the president of Society of Actuaries of Indonesia, and he's experienced senior executive with demonstrated history of working in the insurance industry, skilled in product, investment, financial risk, risk management, and data analysis, strong finance professional, qualified actuary, and CFA charter holder. And welcome, Paul, to the panel. And okay, so let's move to, okay, I just would like to start the panel. Maybe we can just get some basic understanding. First of all, we are going to do the Slido from each of the panelists, how they are right now delivering, in briefly, what is the delivery method of professionalism in your country, the professionalism, Can we start with, Sally is not there, maybe we'll start with Isa.
The Actuarial Society of Malaysia, we're quite lucky. We're not an exam-setting body, so we don't have the resource for developing professional development content. But we're lucky because our members are members of other professional bodies like SOA, like CAS, like IFOA. So what we've done is we kind of, for any of the seminars that we do, we will tag in 1 or 2 hours of professional development hours in there. And it proves very popular because it's also a requirement to be an ASM fellow to complete these hours. So we would use content that's being developed, for example, by the SOA. And then we use members within ASM that's familiar with it, who are senior enough to kind of guide the conversation and case studies. So we have the best of both worlds without putting in too much resource because we don't have the resource to develop the content. I do see that it's very popular because it's a requirement, but some of the case studies, I think you alluded to this when we spoke earlier, are actually useful for the younger members as well. So it's not just for the fellows, that's like tick exercise compliance, but for the younger members as well, we're talking about how you would handle pressure from time, pressure from bosses, pressure from clients to do some of your work. So it becomes very topical. So it is a popular session with our members, and we do get quite good feedback. And we have the best of 3 worlds, mainly because of CAS, SOA, and FOA. So there are different ways of bringing it to our members. Some a bit more straightforward, very structured in terms of standards that you need to upheld. Some societies are more like, we would suggest, this is what you should be thinking about. But overall, that's what we do. We kind of tagged on other professional bodies, bring in a local flavor by having senior actuaries guide the conversation and try and listen to our members. So it's popular, so it's not quite an issue for us. It's something that our members actually appreciate.
Yeah, maybe Jennifer, you want to give a little bit of highlights from SOA? I think it's known by many, but just to give some highlights.
Yeah, sure. Actually, many of the same reactions, I think, as you were sharing, that we do in our CPD have a requirement of 3 hours of the total has to be on professionalism. So there's an ongoing need at our meetings, like you were mentioning, to have professionalism sessions. And the creative ones are often a highlight. We have ones that they call it like judge and jury, and they set it up so that, somebody's on trial for a violation, and sometimes they come in character, and they make it really fun, but it's the things that what we say are like in the gray area where the answer is not obvious. Those are the case studies that are interesting for people to discuss. And I think the same thing when it's the people earlier in their careers, kind of think if they just do the right thing, that they would never possibly get in trouble. So helping them with some case studies where life's more complicated than that and things happen, and the cautionary tales of what to look out for are really valued.
Thank you. Maybe I'll turn to Paul.
Yeah, I think we have in Indonesia we made our own exams. So before or after they finish all the exams, before they get their fellowship, they need to have one full day course of professionalism when we tell them about the code of ethics, code of conduct, and standard of practice and everything. So, and we also discussed the past cases that we have. So it's very interesting, interactive discussions. And also in Indonesia, there are not only the fellowship from the societies, but also the Ministry of Finance. They are supervising the actuaries. So 1 or 2 times in a year, they put a session of 2 to 3 hours sessions, just to they can teach our members about the professionalism and update of the new regulations. And also we are from the association itself. In the big seminars, we usually install like 2 to 3 hours on top of what the regulators session. We install also additional 2-3 hours to we invite like lawyers and everything. So that the it's also very popular topic usually because it maybe give the practical knowledge for the young actuaries, meaning that if there is a company order, you need to, the default is following the company order, but what action that you need to take to prevent you to not go to jail, for example. So that's I think a very popular topic. So you need like at least you document your recommendation, you present your recommendation. If the company decide other things, then it's the management decision, not the actual decision. But at least we document that. The document can also be one of the proof in the court that you may be exempted from the jail penalty. Because there are also cases that is like that, and there are cases where the actuary is also found guilty. So that is the topics that we discuss.
Hi, Sally. Good morning
Hello.
to you. Hi. Sorry to wake you up early in the morning for the session.
But it's not too early here, actually. It's 8:30, so that's quite civilized.
Okay, good. Good. Anyway, thank you very much again. So we were just going around with the panelists that we have 4 panelists, including you. So we were just wanted to get some understanding how you deliver the professionalism. I know IFOA is known by many, how they do the professionalism, but just to get some understanding, just can you give in 2-3 minutes how you deliver the professionalism to your members?
Yeah, absolutely. So in terms of the kind of professionalism case studies and events and CPD, we have three stages. And the first 2 stages are a requirement for all of our members before they can proceed to associate or fellow. And stage 1 is like a kind of interactive online session where it's kind of self-study, and we teach them about our code of conduct, some of the governance issues, and some of the kind of basics of what it is to be a professional. And that's assessed with some multiple choice questions, and there's a minimum threshold that they have to meet in order to successfully complete that. And that's something that we expect our members to do sort of pretty much at the outset when they join the IFOA. Stage 2 is then a little bit further into their career, and it's a much more interactive session where they do get to discuss case studies. They tend to be fairly straightforward case studies, so it's like offer of gifts. Would you accept this gift from somebody? If they had a particular business relationship with you, what kind of decisions might you take to accept that gift, and when might you not accept the gift? So. And it's a kind of week-long session, and they've got 2 weeks to prepare for that as well. And they need to successfully complete that with participation with their fellow delegates. And then our stage 3 that's really our CPD program, which is what we expect our associates and our fellows to do. And it sounds like it's pretty, I kind of came in sort of halfway through the discussions. It sounds like it's pretty similar to what everyone else is saying. It's more meaty case studies. It tends to be that the kind of problems that our members perhaps have faced, we have a committee that develops these case studies, and they tend to draw on their experience and some of their horror stories from the past, some of their professional dilemmas. They tend to be very kind of grey areas. There is no single right or wrong answer. So we hope to generate discussions with our members on those. And we tend to pick the kind of problems that again, some of our younger members coming through the profession just might not think would happen. That's kind of, no, that would never happen, but actually it can happen, and it has happened in the past. So we want to really get them to think about some of the more tricky problems that perhaps they might not have even anticipated or encountered. And we have a 2-hour requirement on our continual professional development, so that our members have to follow these case studies and undertake them. We run various sessions, so we'll run webinars, we'll run like 1 hour or 2 hour webinars, and we tend to embed professionalism sessions into our main conferences as well. And we'll have like 1 hour, 2 hour interactive sessions where we discuss with people in the room. And they tend to be really popular as well. I think people think professionalism is quite a dry topic, but I think once they start to kind of dig into some of the conflicts of interest and the ethical dilemmas, they find it quite interesting. And we have a whole host of resources on our website. So there's case studies that like small paper-based case studies, short 1-minute videos with like a single dilemma or more involved sort of 5-10 minute acted out videos that actually sort of drop you into a scene in like a boardroom with an actuary being put in a difficult situation, with some follow-up videos and discussion points. And there's all sorts of resources on our website for our members to use, so that they can either study on their own or study in groups as well.
Thank you very much, Sally. Okay, so we have heard from our 4 panelists, but we are not going to stop there. We are going to give the questions to the audience as well to understand how they are doing. And so there's a Slido that we can go in, and then there will be some questions, polls coming up. Would appreciate if you can answer the first question. Are we all done? Okay. Okay, some more. I hope you all given what I think rather than going into the 58%, I would like to go into the 5% first. Would like to understand which country, which university, at which university level that we currently give in the professionalism education, because that's something new to me. I don't know for the others. Can
I choose actuarial education institution because my actuarial education, I follow the SOS examination system, not in the Taiwan's exams. So they are where I choose this part. Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, right.
Yeah.
So the local association, so I can see 58% is professionalism is delivered by the local association. Is there any country other than UK and USA that over here giving the professionalism education? Yes, Australia.
Our friends from Australia.
Yeah. And yeah, so, and Indonesia, yeah, yeah. So, are we going, any discussions that want to give some comments on how you do that, and maybe Australian Institute, you want to?
Maybe just briefly, so
Yeah.
it's part of the, sorry, it's part of the formal education, but also, you know, through CPD events, basically a variety of modes, you know, pretty much all the usual modes of delivery of CPD. So, you know, written communications, but also, you know, events that people can attend. So basically, that's how we do it. And
annual requirements that we.
yeah, so we have a points-based CPD system. So different activities might attract different hourly rates of points, but basically, I think about 5% of the CPD requirement is connected directly to professionalism.
Okay, thank you. Anyone from who's joining online would like to share some experience in their local associations? No, okay. Shall we move to the next question? Okay, thank you very much. I think 47% is saying that it should be part of the start of no, it should be part of actual examination to obtain actual credentials. And 42% is saying part of the university education. It's. I would like to ask the question from IFOA, particularly, I think Sally is there. So just because IFOA has quite a lot of universities around the world that are accredited by IFOA, do you consider the professionalism also inside the actual courses accredited by IFOA, Sally? Is there anything?
We actually don't we don't explicitly require it but yeah, from our university partners. I think occasionally when I've been involved in reviewing some of our university submissions, you might see a module buried somewhere in an actuarial program which talks about some of the professionalism and ethical issues, but it's not something that we actually look for.
Okay. Yeah, Jennifer.
We don't have anything officially required from universities either. I think there's a wide range of what they do. But we do have a candidate code of conduct. So to the extent that folks have started taking our actuarial exams, they're going to get that first level of exposure to professionalism with a code of conduct.
Okay, very nice.
Yeah, we have that. Yeah, basically as soon as our members join, they sign up to our code of conduct.
Yes.
I think it would be hard to have it at the university education level because not everybody studies actuarial science who becomes an actuary, right? So they might study general maths and then decide to go into it, or physics, or there's other pathways, especially if you're doing like an SOA or IFOA, an exam-based education. So I think having the bodies responsible for it, it makes sense as a starting point. That being said, everyone should take an ethics course at university, but I think it would be hard to regulate that.
Yeah, true. I think with the other courses, sorry. So specifically with the actuarial degree courses, whether we can, encourage that within the actuarial courses. So if there's any other thoughts around the table, would like to have.
I've put in that it should be at actuarial examinations level, because I'm thinking of members of an association, right, as our profession. But thinking about it, there are quite a few actuarial graduates that don't pursue exams, but they use actuarial knowledge in other areas. So perhaps it is, not perhaps, it is a very good thing if we can encourage universities as part of their syllabus to put an ethics course within. So not mandatory, but to encourage it, I think that's very good. Yeah.
Any other thoughts around?
Yeah, I would agree. I think it should start as early as possible, so that people, especially students, they know that they're coming into a profession. The profession, you should know some basic of professionalism. So I also answer the university, although it's not. I mean, it's not mandatory, but as soon as possible. So there are multiple steps to grow into the real professionalism. It shouldn't be like only one time given. Yeah.
Okay, I didn't drop it. No, I think I put it to university as well, and that's more having gone through different countries and universities, etc. And one of the things I observe with students is them having a maths background, pretty good at grades, and then they get into university, into an actuarial science degree. Okay, let's talk about actuarial science degree. And very often in their first or second year, I find that they struggle. And maybe because they can't get top marks anymore like what they used to. And it's a question of resilience and knowing what they have gone into. So when we talk about professionalism education, it probably won't be those high-level stuff like what Paul talked about, right? The ones for professionals, but at a yeah, yeah, those that goes to jail, and no one wants to become an actuary anymore. But some small degree of level of ethics, like what you said, things about that this is a profession, so you need to know that you have to stand for something, and therefore there are code of conduct. Whether they get into it or not, at least they know, because if you think about it, the people who go into being a lawyer or a doctor, they would kind of know that there is something like this attached to it at the background, right? But I think the actuarial science students, I would argue, may or may not always get into that with that view. So some bits of it may help steer to the right direction. There was a faculty that actually argued, I had a good conversation a candid conversation, and argued, if you are really actually in a degree that's headed for professional qualification, then you should not be missing classes or doing, copying or plagiarism or copying your friend's homework, because there should be some level of, integrity in that. So that was his candid comment as well. So
I would pretty much agree, because we are currently in the countries like developing countries like Indonesia, we are struggling to mention that actually is a professional job. It's some people think that actually is a certification, so it's like barista or something. So you put in a course, you just listen, and then you get the certificate, and then you're done, you can sign. So that's some of the people think. So we say that, but everyone knows that doctor is a profession. So we are struggling we are still struggling to make people understand that actually is a profession. So I think let's start with ourselves first. So that when you want to become an actuary as early as possible, you need to know that the actuary is a profession by itself, not a certification.
There is a question by Precha.
Hi.
Precha.
Yeah. So I just want to point out the experience we've had. So because I'm the only fellow, and I've been in a number of situations where there's been quite uncomfortable, where I've been asked to do something that I'm not comfortable with. But the saving grace has been, I've always said, okay, my professional my association is not going to allow me to do XYZ. So so I've kind of stuck to that, and it's actually helped me. And I say with my professional standard, every time I do CPD, I have to declare something, and at some point I could get audited. So in that sense, I was able to get away with it. But then I know that when I had the same discussion with some of the actuarial students, what they said is it will be very difficult for them to take that stance because, given in our culture, it's a very hierarchical system. And if your boss is telling you to do something, one, clearly you have to be aware of, where the line is. And second, the other person also needs to be aware of where your line is. So one of the things we are thinking now that we have Actuarial Society of Nepal has to come up with the professionalism code of conduct. One of the things we are trying to do is, as part of the HR, educating the insurer. When we do a session for HR, we are going to highlight, so the actual analyst it will need to abide by these type of code of conduct, so that they are aware, because our members are quite young, so it's so difficult. They said what they told us was it's very difficult for them to push the company, CEOs, CFOs, telling them, oh, I can't do this because that's not what my profession doesn't allow it. So yeah, so I think that's something we will try to educate the insurers also.
Can I just support that point? Because that's a really interesting point, because a lot of the case studies that we produce and develop for our members focus on exactly that kind of issue, where you've got people perhaps are put under commercial pressures, for want of a different word, from people who are more senior, or people in a commercial organization, so CEOs, CFOs. And a lot of our case studies do actually explore those scenarios and what individuals can do in that situation. And we're always promoting our professional standards and saying it's not a stick which we use to beat our members with. It's actually a very useful tool that they can use to justify any rationale for acting or for not acting.
Can I jump in with a point? So I agree, like that's a great point, and an important one. And one of the things we've done in Australia is we've set up a thing, it's like a hotline, this facility to actually contact the institute and say, I've got this professional problem. Can I speak to an experienced actuary who's totally away from the situation? Might even be somebody who's, say, retired within the last 5 years. And, just on a, kind of pseudo-anonymous basis, get some input on what I could do, because I do think, even in a pretty large and developed market like Australia, you can still have a situation where you're the only actuary in that company. So who do you go and talk to get advice and support? So I think that is a really practical problem that people working in small actuarial teams are quite likely to come up against.
We have that service as well, and it's really valued by some of our members, because like you say, we're a big organisation, but we have a lot of members who perhaps are working on their own and find themselves in difficult situations.
Okay, can I confirm that in the Australian case, once you about the hotline, once you receive some kind of the consultation as a society association, what kind of the action will you take? Like you will talk with the management of the company, or?
No, so we don't directly, as a professional body, we don't get directly involved in the situation, but what we do is we put the actuary who has raised the issue with us in contact with another actuary who can be of assistance, who isn't involved in the situation, but who can be of assistance to them in terms of giving them advice, maybe just giving them support and encouragement. Yes, you're on the right track.
Okay. Okay, so to help the appropriate judgment.
Yeah, basically, yep.
Yeah, okay.
That's what we do, although as far as I'm aware, it's entirely confidential. So we have our executive staff will act as a kind of go-between. So they'll redact any information that could identify the individual raising the query and the individuals giving the support.
That's exactly what we do, and council just gets the figures of how many times the service has been used in the past 6 months or 12 months, but that's all the information we get. No other information about the complainant or the person raising the topic.
And so for similarly, Society of Actuaries members, no matter what country they're in, the American Academy of Actuaries actually provides that service. You may have heard of the ABCD, and most people know it for the D part for discipline, but the C is for counseling. And it's similar to what people are describing if somebody wants to talk through something with a more senior actuary and get some support for an approach. That's available, like I said, for any SOA member in any country.
Thank you.
I'm just curious, does that mean that the different societies are then liable for the advice that you've given to that person who's raised that red flag?
I think they're very careful not to give advice, but to help the actuary work through the situation, so it's more a conversation.
Like where to go, where to seek.
Well, and to help them, maybe they talk through scenarios or whatever, but it's, yeah, it's not giving advice. I think they're pretty careful about that.
Yes.
Do you also have like whistleblowing? So you instead of you want to talk to someone, but you report the company that they're working for to the association, which finally may go to the regulator or something.
I mean, we don't formally offer that. So if I think about appointed actuaries of insurance companies, they are supposedly guaranteed access to, in the APRA regulated world, so the APRA being the Australian regulator, first of all, every board has to have essentially a majority of non-executive directors. The appointed actuary is guaranteed direct access to the board, and certainly in any company I've ever had anything to do with, which is a lot, there's just a standing process where there's an private session between the appointed actuary and either the board or else the audit committee of the board, which enables that sort of thing to be raised within the company. But then in addition to that, APRA is very, what's the right word, really quite open about saying their expectation on an appointed actuary is that that appointed actuary would go direct to APRA if they think there's an issue that warrants that. Yes.
Local association point of view, the whistleblowing is more in terms of how members are treated during events, for example. So if it's more like a complaint handling, or if there's any issue about being excluded in working groups, then we have that facility for them to raise a concern, but not at the working level. I think that would be between them and their regulators. We're not big enough or senior enough to be able to provide them advice. Of course, they're welcome to talk to the council, but we don't have that facility that the larger association has.
In addition to the experience from among the actual association, I would like to raise another the experience from the other institute. Have you taken the CFA exam? Anyone here to take the CFA exam? I think the CFA exam is for the chartered financial analyst. They have a 3 level of exam for examinations. And each examination, they have a test for the code of ethics and the standard of professional conduct. They also have a published standard of practice handbook for that. So they have a standard practice, and they will just in the test. So I think it is another way we can think in, because I remember that when in the standard of practice handbook, they have some recommendations for how you can deal with the situation when you feel something wrong, but you are alone in your institution. You can, because you hire a survey that just like me, so I can. You should handle the whole practice handbook to your employer to then let them know you have such a center that have to be followed. Maybe there's one way we can think about whether we can have a standard or practice handbook for actuaries. And then we can do that, and that will be in our education system. And if some work that's been have been conflict with such those standards, maybe we can raise the hand based on the handbook and not judged by others or opinion from others. I think there may be one way we can consider about whether we can go this approach, and this can be embedded in our actuarial examinations too. Yeah.
Thank you. Let's go to the next question. I think we have about 81% saying yes and about 17% saying no, and you can see 11% saying not, do not know. Anyone would like to particularly discuss about why they think of their choices? Yes, that we discussed that it should be worth to consider. Anyone is saying no. Can we discuss about that? Any drawbacks that we see embedding that to the university syllabus?
I said no. I think it's, to bring up the topic of what professionalism is and having that at university is fine, but at university you're still dealing with questions that have right answers. And the tricky stuff with professionalism are the ones that don't have an obvious right answer. So it feels like it's a little too early for it to maybe take hold as much as a little bit later.
I disagree. My son attended a career fair about, and actually I think I shared it with some people here already. And the takeaway he took from that was that, Mommy, you're not in an ethical profession because your profession doesn't want to pay claims. So I think, at university degree, they're very young. They don't have the working experience, so they don't understand why things are being done a certain way. Your risk transfer. I mean, it's a bit more complicated than that. But to have that embedded in the syllabus, I think it's good because we have a very bad reputation in insurance, especially. Perhaps not in pensions but in insurance especially, our reputation, the insurance reputation is quite bad. And I guess we could at that level, the university level, encourage more thoughts about why we're in this profession. A lot of Malaysians who come into the profession, who took up actuarial degrees, is because they Google what's the highest paying profession. So, they stumble into that. But to be to show that, this knowledge is also for society betterment, I think it's a good message to include in our university syllabus. Because if not, they're taking away things from what they've heard that's not quite right.
So I agree with both Jennifer and our. This is why I put down I don't know, because on the one hand, so I think on the one hand, who is it that makes you the profession, like is credentializing you to make you an actuary, whether, in some jurisdictions it's the university, in other jurisdictions it's the SOA or the IFOA. So I think it's, the credentialing body has the responsibility for saying what professionalism is. Now, further to your point as well, I think teaching ethics and sort of just broad-based ethics where you don't have to be an actuary to take this course, but like, yes, this is going to be part of the syllabus and there'll be kids from economics in there, there'll be kids who are taking engineering, here's a general ethics course, that I would 100% agree with being on the syllabus. But the actual like professionalism and like all the concepts of our professionalism would apply to everyone else. Like I'm a certified internal auditor as well. Like it's all the same words, right? Like act with integrity, do the right thing, blah, 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 right? So that's good. So I don't have to act differently for the different roles. But so I sort of have that line in the sand for me. So if it is an association where the university declares you an actuary, like the actuarial body says you go to university, you get this degree, you're an actuary, then that has to be embedded in the education, specifically about, what does it mean to be an actuary and act with professionalism. And if it's not that, and it's just you receive an actuarial degree and, it doesn't mean you join the profession, then that should just be sort of more of a general ethics course. That's why I don't know, because I want to have it both ways.
Thank you. Anyone else who would want to? Yeah.
I actually also chose no too for similar reasons. I think a lot of times, let's say if you go for conference and then you don't put it into practice, the retention is like single digit percentage, right? It's probably a bit too early. But to those who actually retain that knowledge, then personal experience, then they are in for a very rude cultural shock, and then it is better not to give them a emotional shock entering into the profession. It's better to introduce this a bit later when they see how life actually works in practice, right? Yeah, not such a big expectation gap. Yeah. Maybe I am a bit unfortunate to see a lot more of these situations, but okay, we'll see.
There's another thing that's been on my mind, and please forgive me if I'm just jumping ahead in the agenda here, but we all think about this in terms of downside risk. What if we agree to this and it turns out to be bad, which is absolutely critical. But there's also another risk, which is the risk where actually we were the person who knew the most, but we were in our own head thinking, we don't want to, what about the 1% chance that I'm wrong, and then we kind of missed the boat and failed to advocate effectively for something that was important. So I do think there needs to be a little bit of a sense of that in how we think about professionalism as well, because professionalism isn't only not saying something wrong, it's also making sure you speak up when you should speak up about a whole range of things, not necessarily just purely ethical things, a whole range of things.
Okay, thank you. Anyone who's joining from online would like to contribute? All right, okay, let's move to the next question.
Do we mean formal or informal? Do we mean formal education, or are we interpreting it, the word education, more broadly?
Yeah, that's a good question.
Like, we had a Royal Commission into financial services in 2018 that lasted a year, and that was a lot of education about professionalism just from watching it.
It should be formal, right?
How about where you get CPD credit for it?
Yeah, okay, so I think probably that would include some of the activity our members did in relation to that. Yeah, that's a good definition though.
Okay, I think we have got all the polls votes. Out of 78% saying no, and about 22% saying yes. Would like to get some more information about in which country that this education is provided by the regulator. I think it's regulator or insurance association.
Yeah, I put yes because in Hong Kong the insurance regulator does give some sort of more like CPD professional courses either by conference or webinars or seminars, because they do regulate insurance companies like the appointed actuaries, the CEOs, CFOs, and also insurance intermediaries. So those have to have require certain professionalism CPD hours as well. So the insurance regulator do sometimes in conjunction with other associations like the Actuarial Association to provide joint CPD professionalism related courses.
So it's a requirement for actuaries to actuaries in Hong Kong to comply. I mean,
to comply professionalism
with the
CPD, but not necessarily through the regulator, but the regulator does provide one of the providers of CPD courses. Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, it's also applied for Indonesia. It's not the regulator of like the insurance regulator, but the Ministry of Finance. They have their professionalism CPD, and they require the actuaries who are signing the report to be also get some few hours from them, because if you put in the U.S. context that the SOA is putting the credential of the FSA or something, but the appointed actuary is by MAA, right? So the AAA is in the Ministry of Finance for Indonesia. So they're also providing the professionalism education.
Any country where the CPDs, the professionalism education is given by insurance association? I have never heard, but if there are any, would like to hear about them.
I think only to intermediaries like agents, not to actuaries.
Not for actuaries. Okay. I think that's the last question that we have, I think, in Slido, but overall, in general, that we can discuss about how we, I think we mainly discuss about professionalism bringing into the early stage of the education, and we heard that the pros and cons about that, and I know there's quite a lot of materials in the SOA and IFOA and any other countries, actuary associations, that they have quite a lot of materials to go through about the professionalism education, and at any time, like for anyone to basically follow it and get the comply with the professionalism education and the CPD. Any country like who are present here who does not have actuary association, like for example like Vietnam, And I think that I heard that earlier that Vietnam, the actuaries need to go through the code of conduct who are working in the Vietnam insurance industry. If Trong is that Trong, right? Trong is there. If he can explain a little bit about how does it work? Because you don't have an association. Is Strong there? Daniel, is Strong there? I can't see.
Who?
From Vietnam?
No, I don't think he's.
Okay, right. Daniel, you have any idea about the Vietnam code of conduct compliance about the by actuaries? How does it
because
work?
the member of the qualified actuary in Vietnam, they are all obtained their fellow from other associations. So basically, actually in Vietnam, they follow other international society, FOA, IFOA. Yeah. So there is no locally professional requirement specific at this time.
Thanks.
Can I just add, Tanuja, that the local associations, even in Vietnam, even in Malaysia, we don't have the resource. So we do appreciate the larger big brothers, big sisters. For example, we've got something from the Actuaries Institute that's included as ASM. We're not members of the Actuaries Institute in Australia, but they've extended that professionalism session to our members to attend. So we do appreciate that because we don't have the resource to develop it. So I think that's one way that our members from the smaller association can still be part of that professionalism in a very thought out manner. And appreciate that from the bigger, larger organizations to continue doing that.
Jennifer, yes.
So I want to put Courtney on the spot. It's a little bit related to the professionalism at the university level. We did some testing with, pre-actuaries, they're not there yet, about how they feel about a credential with or without code of conduct. And are you up for reporting a little bit on the findings? Affiliate, yep. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. You know, I'm trying to think back to this. This was back in 2021, right? And so when we had created an affiliate membership program, and we were trying to understand what motivations that our young members had, or potential candidates would have. So we went to high schools and we talked to some college-age students, and as I recall, there was an understanding of what the code of conduct was. And so in some cases, and then in other cases, that we did believe that there were those findings. And so we ended up requiring a code of conduct for a professional affiliate program, but then for our affiliate program, we didn't include it.
My understanding was that the idea of our profession was more appealing when they understood that there was a code of conduct than without. So I think that's encouraging about the people that, may be drawn to our profession, but also a reason to be talking about it, when you talk with the high school students, the pre-university students about what it means to be an actuary, to talk about that part.
Yeah, I'd say that comment, Jennifer, is pretty consistent with our experience in Australia. Of course, not every teenager who likes maths is the same. It's not a 100% thing, but a lot of people actually do want a profession that cares about ethics and about, what's happening to the world.
Yeah, I agree. We are, just an observation, we kind of are bumping into more, it triggered a thought a little different, that we are bumping into more questions like where things actuaries do affect people, like affordability of insurance example. You know, you come up with a premium of $50,000 for a flood risk that only because you as an actuary discovered Google Earth and you could figure out an address level price, you used to charge it on a postcode basis at $600. Now you can send the guy a bill for $50,000. Well, it's what was on my spreadsheet. Is, you know, is there any sort of, you know, ethical or professional stuff? And again, I made that example up, David, because it's just one I've, you know, been using, but you know what I'm talking about.
I mean, in Australia's third largest city, Brisbane, you didn't make that example up.
Yeah. Noted. So I guess that to me, and we're seeing this also in the climate risk area, where there's arguments that, you know, we should professionally be acting in ways that consider double materiality of things, and, you know, the effect of the decision, you know, the products we sell on, you know, the environment, or if you insure, if you promulgate rates for coal mines or whatever it is. So none of that stuff's really in our professionalism framework at the moment. And AI is another area that kind of tickles this question, but I just curious if anybody in the region had to broach any of those types of issues. I know we're starting in Australia to see a little bit of that stuff cropping up. Yeah.
If you want to, yeah, he can
Okay.
tell something.
So let me tackle this $50,000 premium question. Actually, Singapore Actuarial Society just issued a paper, discussion paper early this month about portability of health insurance business. Right, many customers feel trapped that after they have been in the health insurance plan for, let's say, 10 years, they develop additional complications. If they want to switch provider, they were subjected to additional exclusions. Right, so they feel trapped. When the health committee writes about this topic, we ended up with a situation where different members feel that whether price exactly to the risk is fair or not, right? The case in point is that Singapore is still very price differentiated. In contrast, let's say Australia, a lot more community rating. The conclusion of our paper is that instead of advocating any single direction, we end up saying that, okay, these are the different perspective of fairness, because fairness is in the eyes of the beholder, quoting from my Australian Institute text. So we end up saying that, okay, these are the different perspective of fairness. Under this particular perspective, this would be how you determine premium, or in this case, design the portability rules. And the SAS is happy to facilitate that conversation for the society to come to for the Singapore population to come to a consensus of fairness that most fits the local context, instead of ruling any other way, whether 50,000 premium is fair or not. Yeah, so that's how we tackle that issue.
Anyone else to add more comments? So I just want to take a little detour on to Asia Task Force. This is Asia Task Force roundtable. So most of us are very our associations are at very smaller levels. So some associations are not members still of IAA, and some countries who are represented here do not have associations. So So becoming FMA, when we applied for FMA, that the most difficult part was for us to draft the code of conduct and the process for disciplinary process and having the disciplinary board committee formed and everything. But from there onwards, so our members, Sri Lankan association members, they are following their different association, different exams by each individual actuary. So IFOA, SOA, and we are the code of conduct. That if I'm a member of IFOA, so that's I am going in that route to follow, comply with the professionalism. But moving forward, to go into the next level, that for us to have a set of guidelines on our own is how can others support for smaller FMAs, so to get our own, because we do not have resources, like Kaisal said, it's the same situation Isa and ourselves in. We do not have resources, and so individual, we still conduct professionalism in by the association. We provide professionalism courses and everything every year, inviting someone to come from another bigger associations to come and deliver a course or something like that, and to grow to the next level with that, to have our own professionalism standard and to comply with our own. Would that be a good idea for tier 3 FMAs to have a guideline or support to go into the next level? So any ideas that how we can get that help?
So we have a code of conduct for the Actuarial Society of Malaysia, and in 2019 we adopted the standard of actuarial practice that IAA came up with and adapted that to Malaysia. So we have the framework, we have the guidance, but even though it's written that we can take disciplinary action against those who contravenes, we don't actually do that because we don't have the resource. So it's in there, and touch wood, we've never come across an incident like that. But even if we do, it would be quite tough for us to actually take action or do anything in terms of disciplinary, because we've never done it before. But it's there for our members as a guide.
Yeah, so SAS is similar. So we redid our code of conduct using the IAA as the template. And the next task that we have is to relook at our disciplinary scheme, because it's just, to read it's a bit confusing as well. And this is the struggle that we have as well. So touch wood, we haven't had any cases. And if we did have something come up, like our scheme is written such that we wouldn't even really understand fully how to execute it, right? So we're looking at what's the various different ways to do this that's the least amount of risk to the society in terms of financial risk, and also looking at what other associations in Singapore do as well, to sort of have that basis of comparison from a jurisdictional point of view as well, right? So, because that's the sort of two parts of the question: what do actuarial associations do, and then what do you do in this jurisdiction? So, and I would say sort of our key focus is like, how do we manage the financial risk, right? So if we do take someone to task and then they're just going to drag us through the courts and burn through all the money, right? So they'd burn through their money too. That's about the only mitigating control we have against it. But so that's on our to-do list. So any advice would be great.
Yeah, so I think I was going to make a similar comment, Jill, just from a slightly different angle, which is, a big part of your code of conduct and disciplinary scheme to support it is around meeting community expectations in your own country. And so we're working on the disciplinary scheme at the moment, so I won't get too specific, but, you know, some of the things that have changed in the last 5 to 10 years, we're not talking about stuff that's different now to 1920. We're talking about things that are kind of changing in real time, is attitudes to mental health, attitudes to confidentiality. Another thing that can always change, especially in a common law jurisdiction, is how likely you are, you know, precedent, and how likely you are to get dragged into the courts. So you need to just keep working at it, I think. I don't think you can ever just say, oh, we've done our disciplinary scheme, that's it. We don't have to look at it again.
Thank you. Any other comments? I think we are half an hour early.
That's fine.
Maybe, yeah.
We're all tired.
You are tired, yes. I think it's, if anyone else do not have any comments or questions or anything, we can wrap it up. Thank you very much, all the panelists, especially, and all the participants who participated and contributed. And I think I'll hand over to our chair for the closing remarks.
Okay, thank you very much, everybody. I think one of this, the purpose is, you know, to exchange this kind of idea, and just during the conversation, I hope, you know, you had a lot of insights, and also, you know, although, you know, we do not have the, you know, very clear, you know, the next step, but then this kind of, whenever there is, you know, opportunities, you know, we will try to, you know, organize this kind of, you know, session so that we can understand each other, and, you know, once, you know, we start to understanding each other more and more, there will be more opportunity for us, you know, to collaborate. But, you know, without any kind of, you know, this kind of opportunity, nothing will happen. So we will try to continue this kind of, you know, the activities. Thank you very much, everybody, and have a safe trip. Thank you.
And by the way, we would like to invite you all to seminar that we will be hosting right before the AAC. So everybody's welcome to come, and I'll be sending the information about it whenever I have it available.
Yes, AAC is an Asian Actuarial Conference, which will be held in this October in Hong Kong. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Yeah. Why don't we take a picture?
Thank you.
We will show the, you know, IAA or the IAA logo, or we can just stand.
Okay.
Yeah.
Sally, we are going to let you go. I know, so you can start your weekend. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
Sally.
Really interesting discussion. Thank you.